All right, JB. We'll go ahead and So I want to clarify a couple things. Me and JB were just talking, so we may pick up where we just left off. Also, Maggie's with me today, so you're probably gonna hear the clicking of the feed. So just a heads up, it's probably gonna be in here. But sorry, picking up what you're talking about, we were discussing. So JB has a YouTube channel. Is there anything else that you share stuff on outside of YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube's kind of become dormant lately for me. Just me being lazy with it, but Instagram is a big one for me right now. And just started about
TikTok.
Yeah, about the last. I held off on that the longest out of all of them. But I started that probably, I'd say 2 or 3 months ago, and already had like a million view video trending. But it's just that genre. It's just
So, sorry, to back up a little bit, can you maybe tell people about what it is you do? And then the first thing I wanted to start out with is if I can just get into me and JB went to college together. And the JB I remember was BMXing out of his brain, playing guitar. Yeah. And we weren't like super close in college. I didn't get the Huntsman vibe. So if you can explain kind of what it is you do now, and then after that, if you can kind of maybe backtrack to like, how did you get into this? Is it just something that's always been there and that you just started freaking roiding up here recently? So yeah, if you don't mind,
for sure,
explaining kind of what you do.
For sure. So first and foremost, like I just try to tell people that I'm an outdoorsman. So really anything related to the outdoors, whether it's camping, kayaking, fishing, just being outdoors. Like I have to have it. I have to have that, or I start getting stir crazy. And then through that, it's turned in over the years of like going to different classes, going to different meetups and events and stuff, and being trained and instructed by people that have forgotten way more than what I'll ever learn. And so now I'm, for probably like the last 4 or 5 years, I've been actually teaching wilderness living skills, survival skills, bushcraft stuff. And then because it translates so well, sharing that through social media, creating content has come about. And then on top of that, just it's kind of a small niche group community that you don't see a lot of people that do it. So when you meet somebody else that's also involved in it, or has an opportunity for you to continue doing what you love, you kind of get put at the top of the list. So from like 2013 until a few years ago, I was working at a kayak shop here, a canoe and kayak shop, doing tours and stuff there. And all of it was, while I'm out there doing my job, quote unquote, I'm also being able to create content. And then I also have a few companies that sponsor either trips or help me create content by sending me stuff to research, develop, play with. And then
you're sponsored by a knife company, right?
Yeah. So I started off just buying their stuff and being a big fan of their company and the people that were behind it. And then that grew into me becoming one of their ambassadors. Like it was something new that they had not done before. And now it's turned into me being a part of their social media team. So I'd kind of secluded myself to some people by constantly, anytime I used knives or posted pictures, I was always using this one company. Right. But for me, it's because like I didn't feel like I didn't need anybody else. Like that was what I wanted. So it put me in a position that, they saw that, recognized like, hey, you post and create content and use our stuff more than most of the other people. And so, I was brought on to help with their social media, create content, videos. And then that, all of it just kind of trickles down like, oh, now I need to get a really nice camera. Oh, well, now I really love photography. So now I'm going to start taking photos of, instead of just gear, but like landscape stuff. And like, oh, someone reaches out, can we use that landscape photo? And so like, it's like this niche of like, the outdoors itself. That's why I say like I'm an outdoorsman above everything else.
Yeah.
Because like anything that I can do outdoors,
wide net.
Yeah. So like, you know, some people are just putting themselves in like, oh, I'm a backpacker. So like all this ultralight gear and like they're crushing miles, like 30 miles and whatever. And I'm like, that's cool. But like, I've just always tried to keep like a broader scope when it comes to that.
So, and again, I maybe missed something, but like, was there anything that like got you in this direction? Like, have you always been, I don't know, I'm assuming like, did you camp as a kid? Like, where does this come from? Like,
so,
and we'll just pull that a little bit closer.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah. So, really growing up as a kid, like, you know, I was born and raised in Arkansas, and, I had two awesome men in my life, like that were outdoorsmen. My mom's father and my dad's father, and one of them, my mom's father was a fisherman, the fisherman of the family, and my dad's father was the hunter.
Nice.
And so we always we started camping from like a really young age and did the whole thing of like going as a family in a tent and then getting like a little pop-up trailer and doing all that. And my mom was a teacher, so she would have the summers off. So there were times like as a kid that we would go to Lake Greason in Arkansas. There's this place there called Daisy, where we'd camp for like 2 weeks at a time. And my dad, yeah, my mom would be there with us, and like we'd go into town and do laundry. My dad would go back during the week and work, and he'd come in on the weekends, and it was awesome. And then that also kind of helped, like my grandparents would be there, and like I'd go fishing with my grandpa, or like I didn't do as much hunting as what I would have wanted to.
Yeah.
But I had that connection with like my mom's dad. Like so
if you're going out for 2 weeks, is your grandpa, I think it was your dad's dad, is he hunting food? Like
No. So he was the one. I was more close to my mom's father, and he was the one that was like the fisherman. And so the two of them were my grandma and grandpa were older, and like they were already retired and whatever. So they would come with my mom and my sister and I when we'd go camping.
Right.
But on the other side of my family, like my dad's father, he was, you know, I mean, he was hunting and he always had meat in his freezer and whatever. He was big. He was big into it. But it wasn't a big deal. That's just what people did. Like he had a garden, and it wasn't anything special like what it is now. So long story short, like I did all that and loved going fishing. Like, you know, Saturday afternoons I'd go fishing with my grandpa, and you know, all of us were really involved with the church. So it was like Sunday morning, Sunday nights at church, Wednesday nights at church, and like the weekends you're going fishing or whatever. And then it wasn't until around 12 or 13 years old I started riding a BMX bike, and that just kind of was something that it was independent. I wouldn't have to worry about team sports stuff. I could do it whenever I wanted. And it just really sucked me in. And so I just felt like that was going to be what I was going to do. And I was pretty good at it. I wasn't as good as some of my friends, but I was pretty good at it. And so fast forward, I kind of put to the side all the outdoor activity stuff, all the camping stuff, whatever, because I had this new thing that just consumed me. I mean, like, wake up, live and breathe. As soon as I get out of school, I'm getting on my bike, getting in trouble for not coming home when it's dark. Sometimes like 2 a.m., sneaking in my window. Like, did a lot of like rebellious stuff through high school. And I took for granted like all those camping fun times.
So how long? Because it sounded like you were camping on almost a weekly basis. Like
so we mostly during the summer we didn't have a lot of money for like family vacations and stuff. So that was our family vacation.
Right.
So we'd go for like 2 weeks, and then come back, and you know, maybe do like another trip before it got too hot, and then like the fall, winter, spring, we really weren't, you know, I was just kind of out riding my bike, or like, you know, just doing kid stuff, playing outside. And then really what triggered all of this to get started was I come to Dallas. So
that's the other crazy thing too, is like, so this happens in Dallas.
Yeah. So what happened was I wasn't sure what I wanted to do for like after high school, and I had I had some opportunities for at Ouachita Baptist University that in hindsight, like anybody would have done, because it was like a really nice gig. Like I was really good in music. I was in band.
Is that what the opportunity was? Some kind of music thing?
Yeah. So it was to be a part of the Ouachita Baptist University, like to play, in their band music program, because I was pretty high ranked on bassoon.
No way.
Yes, sir. So it gets crazy, dude. I'm trying not to like just blabble forever,
dude. But, totally fine.
But basically, it was like art and music were kind of like my thing, and so my dad. That's all from my dad. My dad's literally like a savant, like perfect pitch, can tune his piano.
Oh, no way.
He is like he's written. I think he's composed. Like he's crazy. Like, he's one of the best musicians I've ever. And so,
what does he play? Sorry if you don't mind asking.
So I'm
assuming a lot of stuff then.
Piano. So he plays piano, and he started playing the organ at our church, home church, when he was like 12 or 13.
No way.
And he still does it. And he's like 78. Like
that's amazing.
So, and he just, but his mindset of music is like just it's only classical. So like he doesn't know Aerosmith. He doesn't know. So that was always something that butted heads with me, because like my mom like was, when she was younger, like Black Sabbath was her favorite. So like I have this weird mix of like all the good stuff and then like this weird classical appreciation, like composer. So anyways, he really was wanting me to, once he saw that I was good at band, like in sixth grade playing saxophone, and then they like, hey, we should put you on bassoon. Your dad played bassoon, and
I have to look up what a bassoon is. I know that name.
Yeah, it's a really tall double reed woodwind instrument that's on a bass clef, like it plays on a bass clef. So it's like a big stovepipe.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, and it's really hard because there's no mouthpiece on it. So like your saxophone has like a plastic piece, like this, and then you have
it's got like a
reed that flaps like when you put your mouth on it, and that reed creates. But with the bassoon, it's just two pieces of wood. It's two reeds together, and it's really difficult to play. Like besides like the French horn and a couple other instruments, like that's the instrument that can take you somewhere.
So I feel like most people know what bassoon is, but if an image is not coming to your head, it looks like an African, like a decked out African tribe thing, like this huge wooden tube, and then like a thing that comes out of it.
It's called the bocal,
and that's what you were freaking killing it with.
Yeah, so I started.
How do you get on that instrument?
Because my dad, he played it in high school, and so like between 7th and 8th grade, like. With marching band in school, you have like marching band during football season, then you have concert season. So when football's over, you now are just sitting down playing the really pretty orchestra style music.
Right.
That's what I liked. I hated.
So you didn't mind classical?
No, I hated walking around in the stupid uniforms and like hot and sweaty, and like I hated that stuff.
Yeah.
Traveling on school buses. So once my dad was like, "Hey, you want to try this?" I was like, "Sure." So I picked it up, and by like 10th, 11th grade, like I'm all region, all state, like, there's like this girl that was always like number one, like she was unbelievable. and then I was always like somewhere in the top 5, So
is your dad teaching you how to play this, or did you get like?
Yeah, he did. He used to give me.
God, your dad is incredible.
And so what's crazy too is so because it's like super expensive. I mean, these things, they're incredibly expensive.
I bet.
So you get provided by the school an instrument when it's like that. We bought my own saxophone, but when it comes to that, open it up and it's the exact same serial number, everything, the exact same one that my dad played at Arkansas High. The exact same bassoon.
No way.
So that really geeked him up. Like he was super.
That's nutty, dude.
Yeah. So
to be fair, how many bassoons they have?
No, that was it. Yeah. So this is all going to come to head, I promise. So here I am doing this music stuff, and all I can think about is riding my bike and BMX. Like that's all I can think about. I've completely dove into the whole culture, and the style of BMX that I rode. It wasn't like your dirt racetrack, or it wasn't like it's like skate park. Like big mega ramps or half pipe. Like I rode street. So
okay.
So like if you imagine like Tony Hawk, like the video game, like let's say when you're playing a video game, you can go into certain areas that are just a skate park, and all you can do is do tricks inside that skate park.
Right.
Or you can jump out of the skate park and ride around on the street and like jump stairs and grind ledges and like, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what I liked. It was super creative.
Was it downhill mostly, or was it just?
No, just like anywhere. Like, like we'd go downtown to, downtown Texarkana, and there were spots down there like big concrete banks or like, a ledge. And so you kind of create your own skate park, like every time you go out.
Okay.
And then the culture with that came about like at that time, BMX was really heavily influenced by like the Northeast. So there's this group of riders up there that rode for this company called Animal Bikes, and they like were just the best of the best. They were doing stuff like doing tricks and stuff that no one had ever seen. And so of course we're watching all of that on VHS, and our local bike shop was like hooking us up, and they ended up sponsoring us for like with like flow parts. And anyways, that kind of mixes into like what I'm doing now, because I was like that started this entrepreneurial like mindset for me. Like you can do something and love it, and then like build connections with these companies and like get supported by it through them. So that's why I moved here, why I moved to Dallas.
Was because of BMX?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. So here I was doing the music, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to do what my dad did. Like, I don't want to live his life again. Like, I don't want to go to school and play in this orchestra and like do band for 4 years in college and do all that. And so, and
was that kind of the track he was hoping?
Yeah, I think everybody was kind of seeing that. My mom was always really supportive. I'm not saying he's a bad guy at all. No. Like, but just he knew that was probably what was going to give me the most success, potentially. So once I made that decision to rebel against that plan, I didn't know what I was wanting to do. And right at the end, like we were already getting ready to, I think we were about to walk the stage for graduation, high school or whatever, maybe like the week after we graduated. My buddy Ben Youngblood, who was also high school quarterback and just all around, he was like, hey, what are you doing for college? I was like, I don't think I'm going to go. Like, you're not going to go to OBU? I was like, no, I just don't want to do music. And like, I love art. I'd love to do it, but there's not enough. I can't get a big enough scholarship for art.
Had you already turned down those opportunities?
Yeah.
Or were they still okay?
Yeah. So, and then our church had a really strong connection too with Ouachita Baptist University. We had our pastor at the time used to be a professor there, and so it was just kind of like, hey, this is where you're going to go. Like, it's going to happen. And then I threw a wrench in the plan, and like, so I'm like, Ben, I don't know what I'm going to do. And he was like, well, man, I need a roommate. And I'm like, all right, well, where are you? And he goes, DBU. I was like, what's DBU? And he goes, it's in Dallas. I was like, oh, that's awesome. I'd love to go to the big city. Like, And I was like, man, I already know some guys there that ride on a team. Like there's a team in Garland, like G Crew that was here. And like we had come here the opening weekend that Allen had that big concrete park opened up. Like we were here that weekend that skate park opened.
Yeah.
Cause we were taking road trips and stuff everywhere. Like we'd pack our cars with our bikes and film videos and like road trip, like from Texarkana down to Baton Rouge, like all kinds of crazy, wild stuff that most high school kids weren't doing.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. So I applied academic scholarship, and then was like really kind of next to nothing. And then
and this is after you graduated, so this is like last minute kind of putting this whole thing together.
Yeah. So once that worked out, and then like with it being the Baptist private university, the church was like, oh, we love that. Okay. So they helped too. And then my parents were like, if that's what you want to do, I didn't tour. I didn't come up here or whatever. 2 weeks before semester started, I came to fill out my schedule with my car packed and my parents behind me. And, came up. I had dreads. I dreaded my hair up at the time.
I don't remember dreads. That's wicked though.
Yeah. Because I had super long hair, like way long hair. And so I was like full blown rebellious mode. So I come here and, I wasn't a fan of it for a good while. Like it was really, the stuff that I was doing and having fun doing, like I'd never had a curfew before. I'd never been able to like drink or smoke or whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So anyways, to answer your question now that I've been blabbering, like how all the outdoor stuff came about was because around that time, 2005 was when I graduated high school and then came to DBU. I started feeling, a big thing happened in 2005. Like a friend that I rode bikes with, and essentially my parents adopted him, like in a way, like it was like they treated him like their son. He died in the Army, first semester, right off the rip. Like, and I had no friends or family or anything here.
What's happening in 2005? Sorry.
Huh?
What's happening in 2005 as far as like the Army, like
Iraq and whatever? But this was a really wild situation. Like he was back in the United States, and
really?
So that like really rocked me. I was like, I'm going back home. I'm not going to do this college crap, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I was constantly every weekend driving from here back home, 3 hours one way, because I just wanted to get away from it. Like I didn't have any support system here. My best friend that I looked up to, I thought was my superhero, is gone now for no reason. Doesn't make any sense to me. Mm-hmm. So by doing that, I started visiting my grandpa a lot more. And he was living, he was by himself. Grandma died when I was younger. And it just started bringing back a lot of memories. Mm-hmm. And he would always be on the front porch with a pocket knife, whittling on a stick or whatever. And I'd just sit out there with him and talk to him and stuff. Mm-hmm. Well, as time went on, I met my wife, Jessica, there at DBU. So that's when I was kind of like, okay, this is the right thing. Like I wouldn't have met her if I was supposed to have, whole time I'm just living in regret. Like should have went to OBU. I should, he wouldn't have died if I wouldn't have went to OBU. Like I would have been closer to home. So anyways, spending time with my grandpa really rejuvenated a lot of the stuff in me. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't able to fish anymore, but there towards the end, like when we all knew that he was, his health was failing or whatever. Once I graduated in 2009, that was like the turning point year for me for all this. So I was working full time at university. I'm about to get married in September of 2009. Mm. I'm graduating in August because I had to take all these stupid math classes during the summer because I put them all at the end, waited too late. So all this stuff's going to happen. And my grandpa dies. Mm. And then so I'm like, okay, I got to graduate. I got to get married. And then after the summer, DBU lets me go. So now I don't have a job and I'm getting married. And my grandpa died. So I started looking for I'd had an injury at DBU where I broke my ankle and my bike, the skills of my bike just never came back. Like I just never could trust my ankle again. And so I was looking for something. And so after my grandpa died and I got married, I was welding and just doing contract work and whatever, and realized man, I really miss doing stuff outdoors. Mm-hmm. And this is every time I think of outdoors or fishing or whatever, it would just make me think of my grandpa and all these memories as a kid and whatever. So initially for me, it was a way out to kind of not forget problems, but just hey, if I'm outside in the woods or if I drive down to the lake, Joe Pool or Cedar Hill State Park or whatever, it's an escape. And it just slowly became something man, I need to do this. I feel better after I do this. I feel this is it kind of replenishes me. And on top of that, I feel I'm also still with my grandpa. I'm able to honor him and think about the good times with him. When I catch a fish, dang, he would have really liked to see this. Yeah. So that's what it was. That's what started it. I was in between this passion and hobby that I loved with the BMX bike, but I was starting to get too old and my body wasn't liking it, Yeah. And then I also was like trying to figure out, dealing with losing my grandpa and like this, Mount Rushmore of a guy to me.
Yeah.
And the outdoors was just kind of a way, like a safe haven that I felt good about,
Can I ask, like, sorry, was there anything in particular? Because, I mean, so for me, like, I'm not much of an outdoor person. So, like, if you just said, hey, go out to Joe Pool and survive for 24 hours, like, I don't even know where I'm starting. But, like, for you, when you're going out, like, specifically in this time, like, obviously you're not just standing in the woods and being like, oh, this is really nice. Like, is there something you're doing in particular, or was there like a particular practice that you enjoyed? Like, I don't know, I'm going to go out here at this time, and from this time to this time, I'm going to focus on doing this, and then I'll head back. Like, was there something in particular you would be doing? Like,
yeah, I mean, just camping. So like, I tried to like, man, what did we used to do when I was younger as a family? Like, what kind of stuff did we have? How did we do this? Mm-hmm. Like, how did we go for 2 weeks at a time and go camping? Okay, right. Well, I need to get a tent. I need to get a cooler. I need to figure out like how to do this and that. Mm-hmm. And I also at the same time was like, hey DZ, let's go. Like, so we would have like guys camping trips and stuff too.
Oh, right.
And it was just like such a infant stage of like just innocence. Like, there's times I wish I'm like, man, I wish it was like that, now, because you're so consumed with it, with all the stuff that's out there. But yeah, it was just camping. And then like, hey, while we're camping, like, let's bring stuff to go fishing. And then like, you're out there fishing and you see people like on a kayak, and it's like, man, one day I want to get a kayak. And like, so you just you start going down this wormhole. And solo, like the whole time when I was by myself, I would be thinking about, looking up stuff. Like, I used to be a big fan, like when I was a kid, I remember like hours just looking through like the huge thick Bass Pro Shop catalogs that they used to come in the mail. Like, you used to order everything through a catalog. There was no internet, and so I like the same thing, except now I'm on my phone, like looking at like, man, look at this knife, or look at this tent, or look at this whatever. And now it's like there's so many options compared to then. But the thing that made me realize that all this was a thing was it was also it's around 2011 to 2012 is kind of whenever the survival genre became a thing on TV. Like,
so this is like this is like Bear Grylls, like
so even before that too, that was the big mainstream one that blew up. But like before that, I'd found a dude through YouTube, Ray Mears, that was like BBC.
Okay.
And you couldn't watch like full episodes of stuff. You could find like snippets and clips. But then the big one for me was Les Stroud, Survivor Man.
Yes.
And
still,
whether people want to, he still does it. I mean, that's even crazy too. Like, just recently, the knife company that I work with comes out with a new line of knives for him.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. But that was the one that really, like, he's the one who changed the game. He was the first one that did the self-documenting, and it was real.
Because he's like the original Bear Grylls, right?
He's the American version of like, just go out and get it done, whatever. He had no production backing him. And it wasn't until he had already filmed, I think, hours and multiple trips by himself and editing himself, whatever, that it got picked up. So that's what got me like, man, this is kind of a thing. And because of that, he had already known a lot of the skills and stuff. So I was just super juiced. Like, there's all this cool stuff that, like, it's not just camping. Like, you can do this other stuff now. And like, and then Bear Grylls comes out, and it's more like entertainment, fast paced, but you're seeing more of like the world, like, cause he's got Discovery backing him, and he can fly to India and do a trip there and then go into the Amazon. And so I started looking up some of the individual things that I was seeing these guys do, like individual skills. And then the show that like just cemented it for me was Dual Survival. Season 1, season 2, like, are still some of the best reality survival TV show.
Dual survival?
Dual survival. So two guys. The first and second season were two guys. One was named Cody Lundeen, and the other one's name was Dave Canterbury. Mm-hmm. And Cody Lundeen was the barefoot, braided hippie guy, big muscular guy, and his mindset is like primitive, do more with less. Right. And then Dave Canterbury was like military, use your gear to get out of your situation.
Yeah.
Kind of the whole, they pitted it like one of them said Mother Nature is like neither for you or against you. She just is. And then the other one was like Mother Nature's always against you. And if you don't try to get your stuff together, like you're going to not make it. Mm-hmm. So they're essentially putting these two personalities together and saying, hey, we're going to put you in this scenario. And they were, because they're backed by, a big company, a big production. I think it was Discovery. They're able to travel and go all over everywhere. So that all this is just like, that's the only thing I'm like watching on TV. Like at this point, I'm like,
so you're like fully entrenched into survivalist.
Yeah. And all this first, like the big major connection that happened was, I'd seen on one of the shows, I'd seen like a Flint and Steel fire technique, like where you take a rock and a piece of steel and you strike the steel on the rock and it creates a small spark, and then that can turn into fire. I was like, man, I want to learn how to do that. How do I do this? So at the time, and this is gonna like age me, but at the time, like the only avenues to find stuff is YouTube, and Facebook was just starting to not be like where you have to have .edu to have an account. Because originally Facebook was just for college students.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
You couldn't do anything if you weren't a college student. So they're just now like, it's just now where people are creating groups and like realizing that it's a social networking tool.
Yeah.
And so I get on YouTube, look up Flint and Steel. Like Flint and Steel how to, like how to start a fire, Flint and Steel, something. And I see this guy on there, and he's like in his house with this really pretty stone fireplace, whatever. And he's demonstrating like the actual science behind it, and then like the different techniques and whatever. And so this guy says something about his Facebook group, and so I look in the description, and there's a Facebook group there, and it's called like Wolf Customs. So, and this guy's name was Justin Wolf, so it was his Facebook group. So I immediately get on Facebook, join that up, and then through Dual Survival, I'd seen a logo on Dave Canterbury's shirt, and was like, he's always got that on his shirt. And back then, branding, like taping logos and stuff up, wasn't really a thing. So then I looked up Dave Canterbury, and I was like, oh, wow, he's got a school. He teaches this stuff, and he's got a Facebook group.
And Dave Canterbury's the more military guy, right?
That's the way they portrayed him.
Right.
In reality, like, he's a, down to earth, like, just an outdoorsman, too. But that was, like, the niche that was filled through the show. So I found he has a Facebook group. So that's like my only avenue now is like these two groups on Facebook, and people are like posting stuff. Like they're posting photos of like gear. They're posting photos of like skills that they're doing. They're linking their YouTube channels to like doing this and that. And it just like was this whole world of like, man, like there's a name for this. There's a technique to do that. And it was just like, it was just so much more advanced than what I'd realized.
Yeah.
And all the while I'm like, man, if my grandpa was here, like, dude, he like he probably knew this but didn't realize that, he just did it. Like it wasn't a thing. Like there wasn't a name for it,
That's the thing about like this this whole survivalist thing is like, I don't know. If somebody was to pick up like, I don't know, art as a hobby or something like that, like there's certainly different types of art you can do, right? Like fire, painting, whatever. But like if you honed in on one, you would primarily just focus on how to like get better at that craft. So like a very particular like study or like practice of like doing art in a particular way. But like as you're talking about the survival stuff, I'm just like, dude, there's so much. Like how to use a knife, what kind of knife, how to do a knot, what kind of knot, like okay, you've got this kind of setting around you, so you probably need to do this as far like there's so much stuff. Like so like as you're talking about like getting into all these Facebook groups, I'm like, that seems like an endless journey of like oh, here's how you could do this, or here's a different way you could do this, or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's not just let's focus on this one thing.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Well, and I think that I honestly think like if we stop and like look at any hobby or anything that like gives us pleasure, like that dopamine release, like there's a venue for that. So like you using the example of art, like, you know, it starts off as just using a pen, like a pencil, lead pencil and paper, but then you realize like there's color, and then you realize like I can do like oil painting, and then like I can do acrylics, and then like different companies come out with different kinds of brushes that can do things now that used to not be able to do them,
right.
And then you're like, I'm tired of painting, like I want to start doing like sculpting, and then like you can get like with any of these hobbies, like even video games, like, oh, I'm just going to play a video game for a little while. But then you realize like, man, I'm actually kind of good at this. What can I do to get better? Well, you need to upgrade your whatever, your PC.
Right.
And now you need to build this. And so now like you need to share your content, and now you need to like get a microphone, and now you need to get a camera, and now you need to figure out how to edit video. Like,
right.
So it's just an obsessive thing that I think a lot of people don't have time for, or it like becomes more like of a burden than what it does that original of like, oh, I'm just going to do this for fun. I'm just going to go sleep in a tent and drink beer and hang out with my buddies for the weekend camping.
Yeah.
Where I've never been able to do that. I've always been like, I have to get all of it. Like I just
all in.
Yeah. Like I couldn't like, and from when I can remember, like I couldn't just ride a bike. I needed to know how to build my bike. I needed to know what companies made the best parts for this. I needed to know like every spot that there was to ride in my city. I needed to like I needed to meet these people that were better than me, because I wanted to like get as good as them one day. Like it's always been that way for me. And I hate it. Personally, like when I'm by myself sometimes I hate it, because it like I can take the fun out of the room. Real quick. Yeah. For people that are either new to it, or it's just like nonchalant for them. It's just like, hey, I just do this occasionally. I'm like, well, how can you just do it occasionally? Like, don't you know how awesome this? Yeah. Like, have you looked at this?
Yeah.
Have you looked at that? Have you talked to this person? Dude, did you see this came out? And I learned pretty soon that like people are either
trying to crack these keystones, dude. Chill out.
Dude, yeah, exactly. And I learned real quick. People are either like, dude, I'm just like, they stop talking to me, or they're like, really? Send me a link. Yeah. And then I'm like, all right, we're starting a group. Like, you know, like so it's a good thing and a bad thing, but I feel like, you know, once for me, like finding the outdoor stuff, or like maybe it finding me is better to say, was always something that I'm really glad I didn't take for granted. Like, I'm glad that I just kind of kept looking into it and going, like, because you're right. Like, it's just an endless road when it comes to this stuff. And that's, I think, more than anything, like what hooked me. Like,
so like, for example, like and I'm going to forget this guy's name. Forgive me. You did a video where you and this guy were camping out for 24 hours and you had like 10 items each, something like that. And I mean, there's a lot of things I took note of, but like,
and we failed, by the way.
I saw that.
Yeah. Dude, it was like,
I wasn't gonna say it.
Dude, it was like I'm not ashamed of it. I put it up there. Like, a lot of people won't put up failure stuff. Like, it was the worst weekend ever, dude. The weather was like amazing the weekend before.
It looked, and
after, and then that weekend it was like 90 degrees.
Oh yeah, it was hot.
Dude, it was like we were cramping. And I was like, you know, this isn't, I don't have anything to prove. Like, well, I'm not going to do this. I'm going back to my truck. Like, we're going to go eat a burger. Like, you know, we'll just end it. Whatever. We'll try it again. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. So there was like, as I was watching that, I was noticing like, so the first thing, like, I think it was like recycling bags or something like that. And y'all were just stuffing leaves in them. Yeah. Like that in and of itself is like when you're doing it, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. You're just basically crafting a pillow. But like, I would have never, because you were using that as a sleeping bag. Like, it wasn't just a pillow. Like, you were using that, like, you were getting so many leaves in there that you could essentially lay on it.
Yeah.
I think you were laying on like the top half of your body or something like that. Almost like a bean bag.
Yep.
But then, like, the other thing I noticed was, like, y'all had caught a couple of fish, and then y'all created a fire, and then you were just roasting the fish. So one of the things that popped up to me was, like, how do you know, like, so here's, I guess, I'm asking this question, but then as I'm about to ask it, I realize, like, I don't ever fish, so of course I'm not going to know this. But you just explained you have a history of fishing, so, like, I'm assuming somewhere along the way you learned that you can just put a fish over fire and eat it as is. But, like, that's something to me, I'm like, I'd have to look that up. Like, is there salmonella in this thing? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Just everything, bro. Like, just so, like, there's so many things to, like, know how to do, or, like, know, like, oh, hey, this kind of grass is not good, or these kind of berries. Like, I mean, bro, like, that's a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, and again, like what we said, like, it's never ending, and, like, there's a lot of stuff that, like, I want to know, that I need to know more about, that other people that I could call right now could, like, just run circles around me because they've spent more time with it. So, it all starts, like, there's always something that, like, brings, when we're sitting around a campfire, like, whether it's an event like I just got back from in Arkansas, you're sitting around a campfire and we're talking about this stuff, or you meet somebody new, there's always something different that, like, hooked somebody or made somebody interested in this. And then it just, like, opened up, like, the Pandora's box of, like, all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think for a lot of people, whether they know it in the beginning or not, because I didn't for a long while, I didn't know why I liked all this so much. But now I've realized it's being, like, just more reliant on yourself, like, being more like, oh, I don't need this or that because, like, I know it. So it's
there. Like, you don't need
like, it's like, imagine being married to someone who's a master carpenter. Like, you don't need to call someone to come fix something because they know it.
Right.
So,
or if you need, like, a table, you can do it.
Yeah. And it goes for anything, like, not just, so to me, like, that's what, whether people know it or not, like, it's you learning skills and you becoming more self-reliant that hooks you. And it could be a year before you realize that's what it is. But the majority of people that I talk to or that I encounter, like, they wanted, like, man, I got tired of having to spend money on these vegetables that I always eat. So I started looking into gardening. And that's a self-reliant skill. Like, you're providing your own food. Yeah. And then you realize, like, man, like, I really like, this is kind of cool, like, knowing about these plants. And if I grow these two next to each other, like, this one acts as a bug repellent. And this one, like, I don't know. So those things just kind of start to trickle down. But in the beginning, it's just camping. And for me, it was like, having bad trips and, like
trial and error.
Yeah, like, mistakes that made me look more into stuff. Like, one of the first times that I went camping, like, I didn't realize that, like, just because it's, like, 70 degrees during the day, at night, oh, it's only supposed to get 62. 62 is really cold if you're just sleeping in a tent,
right,
in a sleeping bag.
Don't have a duvet over you.
Yeah, like, so I was like, I froze that night. And I'm like, so why did I freeze? Well, you didn't do anything to insulate you from the ground. Like, you're sleeping in a sleeping bag, but it's insulation, but you're crushing all the insulation underneath you with your body weight. So you're just sleeping on the bare ground.
Yeah,
so the ground's always going to rob heat from you. Like, when you walk on the floor barefoot, your feet get cold, but when you put socks on, there's a barrier now of insulation. Right. So that's why I got cold. And then, how come my fire went out? Well, because how come it was so hard for me to get a fire started? Like, you need to learn a way, like, there's a proper way to build a fire, like a sustainable fire that you can walk away from and it'll still be going when you go and gather more wood. And so those things, like, these mistakes that I made, even with gear, man, I spent $40 on this knife. And I didn't know that blah, blah, blah. And now it's either not sharp or it broke. Like, now I learned from my mistake. I need to look, why did it break? Oh, it's because I was either using it wrong, or my skill set wasn't good enough, I was using it the wrong way, or maybe this isn't as good of a knife as what I thought, because the steel that it's made out of is crap. So then I'm going down this wormhole of like,
there's so much, bro.
It is, but like the best thing you can do is just to go and do it. Like ultimately, there are no bad trips or experiences, like unless you don't come back. Like, but you, which there's times. I mean, there's been times like I'm like,
jeez.
But you just look back and you laugh at it, especially if you shared it with somebody. Like, remember that time that we were on the flooded river and on that island and lightning was going.
Yeah.
And so you learn from that stuff. And I think for a lot of people, that's intimidating to like intentionally go and fail at something to try to get better at it.
Absolutely.
So whether I knew it or not, like those things were kind of like being, and to this day, like I still try to have that mindset of like, what I've said it from the beginning and multiple videos, whatever, like I've always said, like I want to share as many campfires as I can with as many people as I can. Like, traveling, like road tripping on my BMX bike. I've always loved driving, road tripping, seeing the country, getting to meet people, learn from them, and then just keeping like that innocence of like, this is your job and you need to do this and you need to make sure you're the best at that. Like, I'm not about that. Like, that's stupid to me. Like, it's not fun. And if it's not fun, you're not going to do it.
Yeah. There's outside of like trying to, I'm not going to say master the craft, because I don't know if that's even possible, but like somebody who's like not into it on a regular basis, like going out with someone like you who knows what they're doing, so they kind of have that like, okay, I'm not gonna die because at least I got JB here to make sure I stay alive. Like, I would imagine there's a very kind of like euphoric experience, like so if somebody's in the city a lot, going out to the woods, I don't know, maybe this is actually a question, like, have you had many experiences where you take somebody out that's not maybe too familiar with camping or hasn't done it a lot, and it was like this kind of a grounding experience for them? They're just like, holy smokes. Like, because like I know like when we would go like on summer like youth camps, like, and they would climb up a mountain, you'd be like, holy smokes, like this kind of like just being in it, like even for a very temporal amount of time, like you were back by night, like, but even in that moment of like just experiencing nature, but to more of a degree of what you're doing, where like you're utilizing nature to like make an environment for yourself or like make food, like just that full on immersive experience. Like, I don't know, has there been anybody that's like, holy smokes, like this is another way of life? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's really what got me. So like, that's the way I felt in the beginning. And then like, shortly after looking up that YouTube stuff and learning about these Facebook groups and stuff, I'd seen that the Dave Canterbury's school, Pathfinder Learning, the Pathfinder Learning School, they held this event, like this outdoor skills event, where it was like 4 days, and you paid like minimal amount of money, and all of his instructors were there, guest people were there, like and that really, like, I was like, man, there's like, I can go and get trained by people. Like, I can go and learn from other people that know. Like, I don't have to do all this on my own. It's not self-study. Like, that's a big break. And so in passing, I like told my wife, like, man, that'd be really cool. Well, it's all the way up in Ohio, and it's like 16 hours away, and it's next year. And so she took it upon herself, and like for my birthday later, like as an early gift, got me a ticket to it. That's and dope. Then got me a rental car, and I drove up there by myself 16 hours. People I'd never known. And so like what I'm getting at is like, I remember when I first showed up there, like these people were like, like they had superpowers or something. Like, dude, he can do whatever he wants out in the woods. Like, I want to be like that. And so I just kind of like made it a goal to be around people that know more than me. And that slowly started taking the edge off of like these things that were intimidating or scary or like maybe a fear that I didn't realize I had or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And over time, continuing to do that, like learning from people and growing and going to events and building my skill set, like I've absolutely seen people that are brand new to this come in, like, and that's what it makes me enjoy teaching and sharing this, because I was right there. And it's not that I know more than you, and it's not that I'm better than you, because I could give you a list of people right now that are like, who I consider masters at this stuff. And they themselves would be like, no, man, I need to know more. Like I still don't know enough.
Right.
But I feel like I have a good enough of a grounding of it now, like a good enough grasp of all of it, that I want to share it and help people overcome those fears or obstacles that I learned the hard way. And it's like, you can learn from my mistakes instead of making your own now.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, there was a few years back, we held a father-son class. One of my friends and I held a father-son class, and it was a 3-day weekend class. I mean, and this father and son literally come walking up with like Walmart bags. Like they just bought all their stuff at Walmart.
No way.
And they like deer in the headlights, completely terrified. But when you're around 2 or 3 people, like there was a group of like 4 of us that were instructing that weekend, and you see like how comfortable they are, and like they know, what they're doing, and they're not afraid. Like it eases their nerves. And then you start showing them how to use this stuff. Like you have a tent because, it's where you sleep. And, you might understand that it's to keep bugs from biting you or snakes to crawl on you. But more than that, like it's a shelter. Like, that's what a shelter is. Well, no, like a shelter is also not only a safe haven, but it's a way to control your body temperature. And if you control your body temp, from not getting wet or not having wind blow on you, like your night's going to be a lot more comfortable. Yeah. Okay, well, like what do I do about the biggest thing, like animals, and people are afraid of wild animals. Like that's why fire is so important. Like fire's not only to keep you warm, but like that's a deterrent for wild animals. Wild animals don't like fire. Like it's just in their instinct that it's something that you might see one, but they're never going to come in closer. I say never. I mean, nature's crazy.
Yeah.
And yes, I've had like a coyote pee on my tent, but the chances of that happening become so rare. And so now it's also a communal thing. Like, let's hang out around the fire. Oh, these guys are out here hanging out around the fire and they're not scared. Why should I be scared? And I can go to sleep and see the fire still burning. Everything's okay. Yeah. Like it's lighting up the area. So like all those skills get broken down into like not just the physical aspect of like you can rub these sticks together and make a fire, but you understand the importance of like, you do this, you do that, you do this, and all of it is going to help you, have a better time out here, or enjoy like waking up the next morning to go on the hike that mountain. Like, you came out here to hike the mountain, but you didn't plan on like, whatever keeping you up.
Yeah.
So it all kind of comes together, and that's exactly what I felt. And like I had these people and these other, other individuals around me that like were okay and like knew how to do all this stuff, and it gave me comfort. And so I kind of started feeling like, well, I need to keep learning and I want to keep growing, but eventually like some of the basic level entry skills and some of the basic things that like I just do now without like I kind of take them for granted. I just start tying a knot this way, or I just start doing this. Like that's foreign to a lot of people. And so I need to share that, because I want everybody to be outdoors. Like I want everyone to feel, what it is that makes me be able to handle problems and losing a loved one or having a hard time. Like you get out there and it just goes away somehow. It just goes away. And so whatever I can do to like help other people feel that, like I'm all about it,
Yeah, because you're basically just tapping into, I don't know what the word is here, like tapping into a way of life. Like So if you're struggling with life,
it's a primal thing, man. Like, as coddled and pathetic as what we are as humans, there's still a primal thing in all of us. Like, it's just a matter of like how it's either engaged or unlocked, or like, you know, for somebody it could be you know, getting a pet. Like, man, I never went outside. Well, now guess what? You're going on a walk to walk your dog.
Yeah.
And you got this responsibility, and now your dog like goes to the end of the street and there's some woods there and you see a raccoon. Like, you know, like, there's small little things that can lead up to it, but it's all in us. Like, it's a primal thing that like we don't necessarily know that we need it, but like once you tap into it, man, it's like, it's awesome.
It's pretty wild. It's like,
it's where we came from, dude. I mean, like,
yeah,
you know, I try to tell people when they're afraid of the darkness, or they're afraid of animals, or they're afraid of like of doing this stuff, I'm like, dude, think about how afraid the animals are that live this life every day are. Like, you think you're afraid of that coyote? Like, you know, do you realize like how much we suck? Like, think about it, like how weak we are. We don't have fur anymore. We don't have fangs. We don't have claws. We have to have AC to live during the summer. We leave an AC controlled environment in a car and walk right into another one, but we sweat in between, and now we're angry. Yeah. Like, with this guy, this coyote like wakes up every day hungry. Yeah. Every day he has to rely on not getting caught or not being seen. Every day, like, he's not wasting calories. Like, you look at how a domestic dog walks, and their tracks are all over the place. They're not worried about their food. They're going to get fed. Right. They're not trying to save calories. Coyotes beeline it. They're cutting corners. Like, they're walking. They got a mission every day. And that humbles you, like, real quick. When you realize, like, how fragile we are, these things, like, become a lot more important, you know? And a lot of times people won't ever feel it because they're not thrown in that situation. Like, your car goes off the side of the road and you have to survive in a ditch for 48 hours. Like, oh my God, I need to learn this stuff. Right. A lot of people that won't ever happen. Like, survival in itself is so overblown and like bastardized that, you know, it's become this sexy thing of like, oh, in this survival situation, you're not going to be in a survival situation. You'll probably go your whole life. You'll never be in a survival situation. Right. Like, if anything, it's like inconvenient camping. You know, like, you're going to be cold for a night and someone's going to find you and you'll be okay. Yeah. But the stuff that I love and enjoy, like, are just all things that, like, help you spend, like, voluntarily go into the woods and spend more time out there as comfortable as you can. Like, no one, I don't remember who it was, but it stuck with me. Someone said, like, I don't want to survive. No one wants to survive. Like, we want to thrive.
That's the bare minimum.
Yeah. Like, survival sucks. You know, like, why would anyone want to, like, you're not surviving. You don't need to put a backpack together and bug out and all this. Like, enjoy it because, like, it does something for you. It releases a serotonin or a dopamine, like something. It makes you feel better. And so for me, like, I try to just instill that however I can. Like, whether someone getting fired for the first time and they get all excited, like, man, I didn't know I could do that. Dude, imagine what you could do if I took the knife away. What do you mean? All right, let's go to that now. And it, you know, like, it embeds into them, but it's a primal thing, dude. Like,
there's something euphoric about, like, because I don't know if we were recording or not, but you had mentioned earlier. Yeah, I think it was earlier. You were talking about, like, how the two guys on Dual Survivalist, I can't remember if we started recording before or not, but basically one guy was kind of this hippie tapping into Mother Nature, and the other guy was like a more military guy. But you're saying their two views of Mother Nature was, one guy was that Mother Nature's neutral, so it can either work for you or against you, and the other guy was like, it's always working against you. Like, and I think if you took the latter, so Mother Nature's like kind of working against you, and you find a way to conquer it, like, that's like the human battle. Like, for most people it's not, because they don't have to deal with it, like what you're seeing. But like, forever, since the start of time, that's been the human battle of like how can we conquer, like...
Oh, we're still trying, dude. We build tornado shelters. Yeah. We don't build homes in flood areas. Mm-hmm. We watch the news when a hurricane's getting ready to come. Like, we're always, like...
Maybe not on a daily basis, but, like, still, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's still humans
against... And this stuff applies to that. Like, when Katrina hit, man, it broke my heart to, like, see people, like, that died from dehydration, like, in their attics, not knowing that...
Just because,
they didn't know you could boil water. Or they didn't have a means to boil water. Or, like, you know... any stuff, like anytime now granted it's completely different and it's not something that would ever feel comfortable like teaching or like, but a lot of this stuff translates to disaster situations. And like, what are you going to do if your power's out? Are you going to freak out? Are you going to be like last year with the winter storm?
Right.
Dude, was not worried about it. I mean, like, it's not being arrogant at all. Because I've spent way more nights cold than what I'd want to admit.
Yeah.
But like me understanding that like a grid could fail and like we couldn't have power and it's going to be really cold, like it wasn't something that freaked me out where I'm like starting to burn furniture and stuff because
you have the tools to,
or even and just that mindset that like I know that we're going to be uncomfortable, but I know how to insulate myself. I know how to like conserve energy, and I know how like to make things that are like worth spending energy on, like hot meals. Like that's gonna keep you warmer than eating, lunch meat or like all these different things that like, again, it's not that Mother Nature is trying to screw me and kill my power grid and make me freeze, because it's awful. Like that's a whole other rabbit trail to go down, is like those people should have never been in that situation. Like, we pay for this and yet you failed us. Like, but that's why I think this stuff is important too. Like knowing these skills or any like foundation of it can even help you in your day-to-day life, because you just don't know.
Yeah. This is a really weird reference, but like it's what you're saying. I don't know. It was a few years ago. I got into zombie books for whatever reason.
Dude, yeah.
I just got obsessed. And I think, it was a trending thing for like, because of Walking Dead, whatever. I read this one. I don't know if it ever became popular. I found out on Apple Books or something like that. No. It was, I read one of those, but the one I'm talking about is World War Z. I ended up reading that book. Yeah. Did you read that?
No, but I...
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So the thing that stood out for me most in that book, and I don't think it was touched on in the film, was this change of hierarchy of social status, where all these lawyers, accountants, everything were the bottom tier because they didn't have all these skills that like what you have, or like a janitor, or like a DIY person, or like all these people that have these kind of like practical everyday like, oh hey, we need this, okay, I can do this. Like they became like the S tier of like society. I remember, dude, that blew my mind, because I was like, you're right. Like the way society's built right now is all based on what we have. Like, and then as soon as those things go, everything flips. Like now you're looking like, oh hey, my house flooded. I need to call somebody out here to fix it. Like, and you have that opportunity now. Like, thank the Lord, you have somebody that can come do that.
Yeah.
But like, just like what you're saying, like when the freaking grid crashes and all these people, like to a scalable degree that you can't just have somebody come out, like then it's on you now. And it's like, I get it. Like why that would shift, like how to understand these things or how to look at these things.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It just exposes, like what I said, like how fragile we are, man. Like we're not, we have things around us that empower us, but ultimately, like what separates us from the wild is we're able to communicate with speech. We're able to make fire.
Yeah.
And besides the majority of animals, we have an opposable thumb. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you run into a pack of chimps and like they're using tools, dude. They got thumbs. They communicate. Like that's Planet of the Apes stuff.
How much? Actually, let me hit on this, and then maybe we come back. Tell me about Alaska.
Oh man. Yeah.
I don't even know if I understand. Like I try to, because I tried to dig as much as I could, but from what I understand, that was a fairly long amount of time that you were up there. Were you a canoe guide there as well? Was that what I picked up on?
Yeah. So that came about because a few years before, like a 3-year period, was like kind of playing tug of rope with either the idea or even getting more invested with getting on a TV show. Okay. So I'd had the opportunity through a mutual friend, didn't feel comfortable about it. And I found out he was offered the same thing. Cause like, again, rewind, like this isn't really a thing yet. Like,
right.
On TV. And so now that it's blown up or it's starting to get traction at this time, more and more companies and networks are like thinking of unique ways that they could showcase survival stuff or reality.
Right.
So anyways, I turned down an opportunity, which in hindsight, again, like this battle of regret, like, dang, I should have did it. Cause that would have been, now knowing what I know. But so a buddy that I met and knew through one of those Facebook groups took the opportunity, went through it, got on the show, changed his life. And so now I'm like, okay, I'll go for next season. So next season rolls around and I was kind of late into the process, but they already had a profile on me and they knew, like, cause again, like me putting YouTube videos out and then also it being way smaller of a community and niche than what it is even now.
Yeah.
These people were just scouring Facebook groups and looking for talent and whatever too. That's how they used to just go and do that.
Right.
So anyways, I was late to that process and they had already had like the people that they wanted for that season. So then I'm like, okay, hitting it hard. The goal now is to get on this show, and the goal now is to not look like an idiot, and the goal is to win it, and the goal is to like make all these people proud that, whatever.
Yeah.
And so this is now going into 3 seasons of this. It comes around and I'm really serious talks. I mean, already done like paperwork stuff to an extent, Skype interviews, and then, I'm told like, hey, the format might change and we'll keep you in the loop. If it doesn't, consider like, be ready. And then if it does, if we do decide to go to this other format and like change up the scenario of like how we want this season to go, then, we'll keep you posted. Like we want you're towards the top of talent of what we've seen.
Right.
So,
sorry. What is this? Sorry. What is the? I didn't know it was a show. I thought it was just like a experience you got to.
This is
okay.
So that what I'm getting at is like I'd gone through these frustrations of trying to like ultimately. I had this dream and I had this idea that I wanted to go and test myself, and I wanted to have this soul searching experience, and I wanted to go and essentially get broken.
Yeah.
Because I felt confident enough in my skills, but I also was so distracted and I was so frustrated, and I wasn't happy with like I'm doing a 9-to-5, and although it's a great job and it's not a corporate. You're making somebody else's dream come true.
Yeah.
It was a family, I was working at the kayak shop. It was family owned, operated. They treated like they still treat me, love me to death. And whatever. I want this to become more than just a hobby. Like I have passion for this that other people that I go and do this with don't have. And there's a reason, like there has to be, right?
Right.
So after a few tug of war games of me like relying on a network to make this goal and this dream happen, I said, screw it. I'm going to do it myself. So my wife and I had gone with my mom and dad to vacation in Alaska for like 11 days. We did the cruise and whatever. And I mean, within the first day of being up there, I was like, this, I have to be here. Like, this is everything that I've wanted. You know, like, I love Texas and I for sure love Arkansas, but good Lord, this is unbelievable. So it never, like, I never could get it out of my head. And so that was like 2015 or 2014 or something. And that was in the middle of playing this game with the TV network of like, so once I realized like that this season wasn't going to happen, they told me, hey, we're going to switch the format and we're doing like couples or duos, whatever. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try to figure this out myself. So towards the end of 2016, I started like really talking to my wife about what if I go and like work, or like that way it's not just a waste and I'm not just, you know, going and having vacation, but I can actually bring income, but I'm also like going to a place that not a lot of people would do or whatever. And so I started looking into the companies that we used and some of the guiding companies and whatever when we were there. And I was like real picky because I didn't want to like just go and live in this little town and meet all the people and whatever.
Yeah. So are you looking for like this isolated spot that you can?
I'm looking for something that's gonna be like the most, I guess, the most extreme or the most like, you know, whatever that a company could offer. And I was like, I'm not gonna go and work as a fisherman on a boat, you know, but like I want to be able to like invest in this land, like connect to this land, connect to this area. And so
what's the time frame you're looking at doing this, like in your head? Like, what are you thinking? Like,
so this is like end of 2016, beginning of 2017.
No, sorry. I mean, like, what are you like, okay, I'm going to go do this for 6 months?
I was ready for a year.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. I was ready for at least the end of winter and then leave when winter was starting. So
if you don't mind me asking, like, what was Jessica's take on this? Like, if you just...
Yeah. At first it was like, just kind of like a fantasy, like kind of a, you know, we're just talking. For me, it felt like that. But looking back, like I knew, like it was never like that for her. She knew that I was like going to do this.
Because that's your thing, right? Like yours is like, I'm all in. So,
and she also knew like how much I love this and like how much passion I have for it, and that there's only so much that I could do around here. There's only so much I could do in like East Texas. There's only so much I can do 5 hours away in the Ozark Mountains at Arkansas. Like there's got to be something more.
Yeah.
And she really knew that when like all the TV stuff was going on. Like I wasn't telling anybody about it because I don't want to be a guy. I don't want to be that guy that like tells everybody I'm going to go and do this and this and this without it happening first.
Yeah.
You know? So like between us, like all the time I was talking about, all the time I was like, you know, I traveled and went to all kinds of events, like outdoor skill events, gathering, like being trained and taught and going to different schools and like learning and educating myself to where like I couldn't be caught with my pants down.
Yeah.
And I was training in a way, but she just knew how serious it was for me, and that like that we weren't like that she wasn't gonna, that it wasn't gonna be something that I could just cut off, and then like I could just go and get into a cubicle and mash buttons, you know. So she was more supportive of it than what I was in reality. Like not that she was like get out of my house, but she was like she knew like how much time and energy I'd invested in all this, and she knew like it would be an ultimate payoff. So
I just think that's a commitment, man. Just to
it's huge.
Peace for,
and I think if we, you know, because we met, you know, we've been together for 15 years now. But you know, I think us, the way that we met at DBU and stuff, like we were friends first and we weren't really attracted to each other and like, you know, really weren't interested in dating or whatever, but we were just friends, and like my sweet mate and her went through the rush or whatever together. And so, like, I think that background of us being friends and whatever first.
Such a huge leg up.
Yeah. And then, you know, where we are and, like, you know, not having a family and kids and, like, you know, whatnot, that was also something that, you know, it was more available.
Right.
And really grateful for that. Like, not that I'm really grateful that, like, I have the
freedom.
Yeah. Like, that I can do, like, I can go and do, like, father-son classes, or I can be like, you know, if DZ wants to go camping, I'm always available. Like, whoever has, you know, I have a very non-traditional lifestyle compared to most people. And so I don't want to be selfish with that, you know, and just like I'm that dude. You need to grab a beer? Yeah, I'm free. Let's go. Yeah. You know, so it rolls around and I find an opening, a position at one of the companies that we had used. Like, we went and did like when we were on vacation there, we went and did like a dog mushing camp. Like, we went up to this camp at the top of one of these mountains, and they have like legit dog mushing. And when we were there, it was the off season, so they're all training on like carts, like with wheels and stuff, but they're all going to be running the Iditarod and whatever. Right. And so I was like, man, that company is pretty big. They know their stuff. They're, you know, professional. It's not just some dude in a shack, you know. And they had a position there for naturalist / canoe guide. And in hindsight, it was really vague, the description, but they basically said that this was for someone who loved being outdoors, who loved being in nature, and that your job was to learn the area, like, you know, learn the plants and animals, the history of the area, because you're going to be talking to tourists that come through and, like, leading them on the excursion. But then the canoe guide part of it is you're going to be guiding people in canoes to a glacier for them to be able to, like, get as close as they can to this glacier. And about 80% of your time is going to be living off grid. And I was like, that's
bingo.
That's the one.
Yeah.
That's it. So I applied, and they were real quick with, obviously, like, I put everything in my application of what I can and can't do and whatever. And they were real quick to get back to me. And then it just began the process. Like, in order for me to have the job, they wanted me to get certain certifications. So, like, I had to get what's called a WFR, WFR, which is a Wilderness First Responder certification. Because where we were, there is no...
That's interesting.
There is no, like, ambulance that's going to come up, or paramedics. Like, you're the first person on scene if something happens, and you've got to get them prepped and ready for evacuation, like when the big boys come in a helicopter. Yeah. Because you're just so far out there. Right. And then the other one is because we were going to be on the water, they wanted a WRT, which is a whitewater rescue technician. So you need to learn how to navigate moving water and, like, you know, currents, and if you're capsized, and, like...
Are these things you wouldn't have done? Because you were a canoe guide up prior to that point, right?
Well, here it's just flat water. Like, here it was just, you know, we just take people up boat and trailer and put them in the water. They paddle, and we go and pick them up. Like, it's all flat, navigable water. Right. There's really nothing extreme about it. So, and I'd done, you know, obviously the other thing too is that was what kind of, I think, helped me get the job pretty quick. Was like, I'd already had a lot of experience with kayaks, moving water, like, up until then, like, every year, because that was 2018 when I went to Alaska. So I think starting 2016, we were doing, like, this epic Buffalo River trip, and, like, paddling like 30 miles, 60 miles, and, like, every year I'd get more. And then, you know, Arkansas, growing up, we did canoeing, and, you know, so that was all stuff that led me to the job here. But now I'm like, you're going and you're really getting into it. Like, this is the real stuff. Right. So they want, and it's liability. So you need to be trained so that this company's not held liable if something happens. when, or not if, but when.
Yeah.
So that kind of threw a wrench in my plans because they had offered me the job, but I wouldn't officially start until I could pass those certs.
Right.
So now, like,
are those things you could have done down here?
Yes and no. So the closest one for in the time frame that I had to be there to work, it was like in May, and I got offered the job like end of January, beginning of February. The time frame of it would have really been precedent that if I didn't, like, because I'm a thinker, so if I don't pass this, what's my plan B?
Right.
Where can I go? And there wasn't any available without having to drive to like Colorado or Utah or something, because it's kind of a weird thing. So, and now it's frustrating is what it is. You can go to UNT and get your wilderness first responder on the college campus. It's so, because it's a bigger industry now.
Yeah.
So I found that in where I was going to be based out of in Skagway, that there was a wilderness first responder class being held there, but it was going to be like almost a month before the start date.
All right.
So I was like, well, that's my option.
How long does that take, that course?
It depends. Like you can do, like, let's say if you only want your certification, I think now it's different, but then, if you wanted your certification to be a 2-year cert, you could do like, a 3-day, like start Friday morning and end Sunday afternoon. But then, it was a 5-day, almost 6-day. So I was like, all right, we're going to do this. And then the company said, hey, we're going to actually have someone from Seattle, come up here on one of our rivers, here in Alaska. And we're going to host the whitewater rescue technician course. So we're going to pay for that. Like, you're good, on that one. You just need to pass the Wolfer one.
Yeah. So
it was cool because I ended up getting to go up a lot earlier than most everybody. Like, besides me and like 2 other people, we were like the only ones there.
What's the housing situation?
So I'm really glad you asked that, because for whoever listens, like regardless of what age or whatever, the one thing the biggest regret that I have, I guess, I don't like regrets, but I guess if I were going to have a regret, would be immediately leaving high school and going into college and not knowing that there were other options. And so now, like, especially young people, like, as long as your parents are okay with it or whatever, like, seasonal work is just the most amazing thing I could recommend to someone, because you're going to a place that you probably would have never gone to. You're getting paid to work in this environment that is going to do amazing things for your character and your skill set and your development as a young adult. And then on top of that, like, they're literally paying for your housing too, like, for the most time, or it's subsidized where it's only like $200 or $300 a month.
Yeah.
And that's like 2 hours of work.
Yeah.
Like, you're making $300 in tips from just the first group of people.
Right.
It's crazy. So that's what the housing was like, is that we had, where my position, because the company has like other positions there that are, some of them are only based in town, but mine being like, we had a location to sleep in town, but then for me to get to where I would actually be working at my cabin was an hour and 15-minute boat ride away. And you could either get there by boat or plane. That was the only way. So I had a cabin out there that is company, like, you don't pay for it, whatever.
Just you, I'm assuming? Or
I was, for a little while it was, but as they hired more guides, my roommate Micah moved in, and they had a rotation for us to where not all of us were out there at one time. So the company, the housing in town, if I would have just worked like one of the bus driver jobs or the zip lining tour guide or whatever, you have to pay like subsidized housing, like it's really cheap. But since I technically was like agreeing to live 80% of my time in this cabin in the woods, I didn't have to pay for any of the time that I was in town.
Right, got it.
So, yeah. So get up to Alaska. I do this amazing first responder course. My instructor was a Like she was a 25-year vet, Alaskan state trooper. She was just badass, like just a fireball of a lady, and learned all kinds of awesome like just stuff. Like we would drive, or I would get in the, because you don't have a car, so whoever did have a car drove from the States through Canada to get up to Alaska, ride with them, and we'd go to these crazy locations, and hike off into the woods, and like she'd create these scenarios, and it was really cool. We had a guy that was recerting because his had expired, and he was actually a Juneau, Alaska search and rescue member, and he had a search and rescue dog with him. Jeez. And so we got to like incorporate using a dog in these scenarios and whatever.
Oh yeah.
So anyways, like I went through that, and that like was really tough because I had all this pressure, and like I'm walking every morning like 15 blocks to get there, and I'm all by myself. But I'm like, man, I've done this before. I moved to Dallas and had nobody, no family, no friends, support system. Yeah. I'll just make friends. And so once I completed that certification and like that pressure was kind of off of me, then I was just like, let's go, like let's get to work, And I ended up being up there almost 130 days, I think.
And so the whole goal was you land this gig as a canoe guide, but the main thing was, because like, are you doing this like on weekends, or is this mainly a Monday to Friday kind of gig?
It was full so the way that to answer the first part of it, the main goal was like what it said is like to connect to this place, to have like a soul searching, whatever. And my mindset was, I don't want to rely on a TV network to do this. And I don't want to rely on this experience of like, I go with minimal items out to this environment that they picked for me, and I have to stay out there as long as possible. And if I don't really get paid that much money to do it. And if I do, I have to be like the ultimate winner to get the prize.
Right.
And I just didn't like those parameters.
Yeah.
Like, you're not able to relax, or like not relax, but like enjoy it in a way, because it's like this.
It's too systematic,
I guess. Yes. Yeah. And I also just kind of felt like I got yanked around on my chain by them. Like, do you want me or do you not? If you want me, you would have had me on it. Like back whenever we first started talking. So that was the mindset of why. And then the how was, we rotated. So there's like, I think between 12 and 13 of us canoe guides. And after like the first month or two, really within the first month, it came pretty apparent like who wanted to really be out there and who wanted to like, so they kind of changed, and like they let certain people that wanted to stay in town like full time and didn't want to live out in the cabins and rough it.
Yeah.
They let them stay in town and just work with the boat captains. Cause like we would load up, like, let's say this is Skagway, and then we have cruise ships or planes or people on the trains come in and they're wanting to do this glacier tour experience. So we have like 3 different passenger boats, like these inflatable rigid hull boats that could just haul ass through the water. They're sick. And so we'd load up like 20 to 30 people in each boat, and they'd go the hour and 15 minutes to our peninsula, to our beach. And then we'd unload them and get them in these manual drive like school buses and drive down these logging roads, like almost falling off the sides, and like get up to the top of, like towards the top of the little mountain area, and get them all outfitted with like rubber boots, life jackets, rain jackets, paddles. And then from there we go hike down this trail for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes down to this river. And this river was runoff, like meltwater from the glacier, and it would flow into the ocean. And so all of our canoes are down there, like 31-foot canoes. We could fit like 13 people, 12 people in it.
That's massive.
And they had like little 4-6 horsepower motors on the back. So we would paddle for a little while up the river, and then once we got to this area that was like too hard to paddle, like we'd cut the motor on and we'd zip through that little current area, and then there's this huge lake, this huge glacial lake, and we'd we'd go across the lake with the motors on, and we'd pull up to, like, people called it the beach, but it's like silt. It's crushed rock from this glacier. So it's like, it's not mud, but it's not like sand. And we'd pull up to there, and when we'd start walking across that, and it was like, you know, almost a 40 minute walk to get to the glacier. And we let people get to the front of the glacier. We turn around and walk back, do everything in reverse, and we do that 3 times a day.
Whoa.
So like, I started clocking, I think it was like, in one day's time, it was around like 17 or 18 miles of walking every day.
Jeez.
So initially they had all of us guides, like all 12 of us on rotation, to where some would stay out at the cabins and a couple would be in town to meet the captains down at their boats. And the people that are on the boat are like the naturalist tour guide. Like, as you're going down this big canal, like, you're pointing up, this is where a lot of eagles nest. This is where we normally see whales. This mountain range is called blah, blah, blah. This is where the Tlingit, you know, natives lived back in the time. And, and then they would stay on the boat and unload the passengers, and then they'd go back into town to pick up the next group. And certain people only wanted to do that. They didn't like being out in the cabins. Whereas I wanted to be out there as much as anybody. There was a couple of guys that were like, I don't ever want to go back into town. Like, they'd give you their laundry and like, but I would always go into town, restock on groceries, and get my laundry done, and then like have a night that I go and get a pizza or get a beer with buddies or whatever.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it was like anywhere between 8 to 12 days that you're out at the cabin, and then you come in town for like 2 days, 3 days.
So, like, outside of staying in the cabin, did you ever, like, just go stay in the woods? Like, did you have,
had plans to, man. Like, I really overpacked, and like, I brought this big Pelican case of like stuff and like a bunch of things to like, again, like double dip in all this, like companies that I was already working with, or was like literally companies that sent me gear to use while I was there.
Yeah. And
I brought all my camera equipment and stuff to film videos and content. But I was just always like so broken and beat at the end of the day.
Right.
Like, you know, you're up at 6, and you're either heading down to the boats to like get gas in them and check all of them before the day starts. And then, you know, you're not done until, you know, 6 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night. And then you're really not actually done, because like there's going to be something that's wrong. Like you're in it's like a complete off-grid, like homestead kind of thing. Like, we collected rainwater and had a gravity system. Like, we had big solar panels that helped keep this big bank of batteries, like car batteries, in this shed charged. And then that would start this diesel generator, and that diesel generator would allow us to have like electricity in the community cabin. Or like we had, so like the way it was broken up is we all had individual cabins that were basically kind of like, you know those real fancy sheds that are in like the parking lots of Home Depot.
I think
that you can just buy them already built.
Oh yeah,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The ones that are like 2-story that have like a window. Yeah. That's what you slept in, pretty much. It was like a big shed kind of thing, and that had nothing. It was like no electricity, no water, no nothing. You didn't eat in there, like, and where you ate and cooked and had some electricity or play card games was a community cabin. So it was this bigger cabin, and in there was like 2 propane fridges that ran on propane bottles, and then there was a propane stove oven combo, and then the sink in there was gravity water, like was from the rainwater.
So there's like a primary cabin where everyone would like convene at, but then there was a smaller cabin which you actually like.
Yeah, everybody had their own smaller cabins.
Got
and
it.
Then there was like, you know, a couple of outhouses in between each cabin to use. And so like you'd get done working, quote unquote, doing your job, and then you'd come back and like the propane fridge isn't working.
Yeah.
Or we started, a couple of the people started getting gardens, like started planting gardens. Me and a buddy would always try to go and like forage down at the beach and like get stuff to cook with, or we running crab pots, you know, to catch food. And it was all optional because you could just bring stuff in from town, but it was so expensive. Like,
Right.
I mean, it's like $8.25 for like one avocado at one point. So, and then like it sucked because Skagway only had one grocery store. So, and they'd only got stocked on Tuesdays. So
If they didn't have it, they didn't have it.
if your shift ended Saturday evening, you get into town, and on Sundays, your day to get groceries, they're all sold out. And so you're
Right.
literally eating like crushed up packaged, like, damaged ramen packets and like lunch meat, and everything else is sold out. And then by the time you leave to go back out to your cabin, they're coming and stocking the store on Tuesday, and everybody's getting all the fresh vegetables, and because everything comes in by boat,
Yeah.
So
I guess, like, do you feel, I don't know, do you feel like you accomplished what you had set out to do?
absolutely.
Or did it end up taking like a different outcome?
In a way, like when I was there, and for really the first year that I was back, I wouldn't have said this. I wouldn't have said that it did for me what I was hoping it would, just because of the way things ended. I don't want to get too much into it because like companies involved and whatever, but like within the first month and a half that I was there, we did a man overboard on this guy that was like in the water about to die, like from hypothermia. And I was the only wolfer that was on the boat heading back into town, my day off. And we literally found this guy, like water that was way too shallow for our boat to be in, but we were able to get into it. Found this guy that was like on a kayak tour, and it had gone wrong and it capsized, and the water was way too rough for them to be out that day, like 6-foot swells, and they decided to launch a kayak tour anyways. So pulled that guy out, like hypothermia wrapped him, brought him back from like not being able to speak, and again, like that training that I had like helped me, but everything ended okay. Everything was like it was a success.
Yeah.
But then towards the end, there was another incident that happened where things didn't work out so well, and at the time too, before that even happened, I'd had some family stuff happen here at home, and like I needed to get back. Like I needed to be here for my mom and my dad, and so I'd already talked to my boss and told her that hey, I'm putting in my 2 weeks, because I was supposed to be there till like the beginning of October.
Yeah.
But a lot of people leave, I don't know, middle of September because the tours slow down so much, and you're just essentially hanging out up there now, and you're not really making any money. Because if there's no tourists there, you're not making money. Like you get paid pretty well to be up there. Like it's above minimum wage here in southern United States or in lower 48. But if you don't have a job that you can get overtime in, so the way it works up there is the second that you're on the clock for more than 8 hours, it goes by the day, not by the week. So when you're on the clock for more than 8 hours, you immediately start hitting overtime.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, and I never had a day that I wasn't working 12 hours.
Oh, jeez.
Really. I mean, most of the time. And then on top of that, if you're good at your job and you know your area and you know every kind of rock and every kind of plant and bird and like all that stuff, you're literally picking salmon berries and feeding them to your tourists when you're walking down the trail. Like you're getting crazy good tips, like $200, $300, $400 a day.
Wow.
So a lot of people leave early because the money dries up and you're just kind of hanging out, and it can cost you money to be there, or like people just get burnt out on it. So I'd felt bad initially because I left sooner than what I had planned, but I just knew that I couldn't, like I would feel bad if I just ignored it and then something bad, tragic did happen and I stayed up there anyways. Like I could have come home. And then it solidified it for me because after I put in my 2 weeks, that very next week is when we had a fatal incident. And so I was like, Ooh. So for a while, like that really messed me up.
Yeah.
Like feeling responsible, all that stuff. and cutting it short? And did you, should you have stayed and gone through that with your other guides that have stayed and helped support them? Are you a bad person because, you know, you're choosing your obligations over, you know, being, because we had all gotten real close. I mean, you're living together. They're the only other, you know, with the TV show stuff, like, oh, you're all by yourself and you're out there and it's crazy. Like, those guys are animals. Like, they literally become wild animals and like they're starving or whatever.
Yeah.
And I felt, you know, like, oh, I'm going to be with these people, so it's not as crazy. But I mean, it's like 4 to 6, maybe 7 people living on this peninsula in the middle of the woods with no other way. Like, you've got to walk way down, you know, like almost a mile just to have cell service, and it barely works sometimes. So like, I'd felt all that for a while and adjusting back to life here. Like, I don't remember my airplane ride home at all. Like, because not only was I like tired, and then like that incident had happened and I was still kind of in shock and processing all of it, but also like just everything was moving so fast, like compared to what I was, you know, like I've spent the majority of my time with just a skylight as my lighting. And now I'm like, you know, I've got a headache from these super
UV,
bright lights. And then it was the craziest thing. Like when Jessica met me at the airport and I got in a car and on a highway going like 80 for the first time, and I just complete panic attack,
That's wild.
Like overwhelmed me, freaked me out. And I wasn't even like, again, I wasn't out there by myself in the middle of nowhere, and I wasn't not around vehicles. Like, I rode a bike everywhere in town. Like, we had company bicycles that you just get on a bike and pedal to the store or whatever. And I'd gone on a couple of car rides with people that had driven there, but nothing like the city life, nothing like constant
80 miles with cars all around you.
And then like that night, no sleep at all. Every time the AC cut on, I heard it. Every time a plane flew over, I heard it. Yeah. Every time someone was walking outside, I heard it. Man. And so for a while, like, I thought that I made a big mistake. I thought by doing it, I remember telling Jess, like, I should have never gone and did that. Like, how am I gonna get back to the way things were? Like, and once I kind of processed all of it and like kept in contact with my friends I'd made there and like worked through it and saw that everybody was doing okay and that everybody was moving on, and like gave myself permission, like eventually to like start getting whatever, then it really was a struggle for me to not always compare everything to that. Like me going out to the lake here or hiking trails here or going to East Texas to my friend's property. Yeah. I just didn't care. It didn't feel good enough. It wasn't big enough. It wasn't Alaska. Like, it wasn't, you know, I'd gotten so hooked on feeling like small in this massive place, and like, you know, whales going by and like literal like brown bear grizzlies like in camp, and like literally seeing this glacier that's been there
like since the apex of outdoors. Like,
yeah. And now I'm like back in Texas, and now I'm going to like Lake Grapevine. And and I just was in such a bad mindset, dude. Like, it's such an unhealthy, like, because you can't do that. Like, I had to like reprogram myself to like enjoy and remember good, happy things about that, and know that like that's why you did it. That was the whole reason why you went up there. Like, remember you went on vacation and saw it all for the first time, and you couldn't get out of your head. And now you went and submerged yourself in, like, you literally walked barefoot, you know, on land that, like, you know that native people walked on.
Yeah.
Like, that's why you did it. So be happy for that. Be thankful for that. Like, stop comparing everything to it, because there might be a chance you can do it again, or you could do something, you know, epic somewhere else, you know. But like, you can't make that like
the reality by which all of the reality
it can't be your expectation now.
Yeah.
So it took a while, man. Like I was and it was really unhealthy too. Like I'm looking back, like, cause I got back and then I was so stir crazy and so messed up, like from just not accepting that, you know, hey, that wasn't life. Like that was a job and that was an experience, but your life was always here. Your life was always, you know, that was Disney World.
Yeah.
So I immediately like went on a road trip like towards the end of the year and like went to Georgia, and that, I mean, that really is kind of what like got me going through all this and like getting to a healthier state of mind, because I started like going back and doing what I used to do, like go to events, go and meet new people.
Yeah.
Now go and talk about it to other people. Mm-hmm. And that makes you feel better, you know? Like,
yeah. That's crazy. There's one thing I wanted to ask you, just by the nature of what you do. If you can walk, I think I told you I was going to ask you about this. So there's a story, I don't remember when it was, Tyson Steele. I can't remember where he was at. He was in like a cold place. I think there was snow all around him. May have been Alaska. I'm not really sure. I don't know if he was American or not. But it started getting circulated because he was in a cabin with his dog. I don't know what exactly happened, but his cabin burned down. And then a helicopter found him. I want to say it was like 20,
I remember
23, 28 days later. And he'd written SOS in the snow.
It's crazy story, dude.
Insane. And I think his dog passed away too, which is like super sad. So it's basically this dude alone with no like. So my question to you was, if you're Tyson Steele, this happens. Can you walk me through like, all right, I start here, and then once do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So you want the mindset like currently me already knowing stuff and me like having some like skills and knowledge and whatever.
I'm just curious because I'm shambles.
Or would it be like, do you know if he had already done anything like this before, or was he just kind of caught with his pants down and like, you know, like you look at like, what's the movie?
The guy that left everything behind in
School Bus
into the wild.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like he really didn't have any knowledge. He learned it all when he got there. So do I answer it with the end of the wild mindset, or do I answer it like right now, current, like what would I do?
I want the Wizard of Oz JB who knows everything about anything. No, this is your situation.
That's not true at all. All right. So
what
if I'm assuming if I'm already there and I'm in a cabin, I've got a dog that I've got sustenance to, like, that's why I'm there. I wouldn't just be in a cabin if I didn't have already some kind of home life there. Mm-hmm. So we'll just roll with that. So there's actually a bunch of accounts in like different fur trapper journals or like long hunter journals and stuff of like even like prairie land areas, like cattle farmers and whatever, that used to rely on like cabins that they would keep stocked, or like even, you know, there's an amazing documentary called Happy People, A Year in the Taiga, and they still do this like with their fur trappers. So they just go like from cabin to cabin into the wilderness, and they're running their trap lines. And so they're relying on, I'm going to get to this cabin, it's like 60 miles away, and I'm going to stay the night there for a couple of days and process stuff, and then I'm going to go to this next one that's another 60 miles. So like so we'll say that it's already prepared and you have whatever, but then everything burns down.
Right.
My immediate thing is, the first thing is, and this is really cliche sounding, but like, is to not get frantic, like to not panic about what's happened, because you have this massive adrenaline dump. Like you wake up and you see stuff on fire and you and your dog get out, and now you just watch everything burn. This rush of emotions is going to hit you.
Right.
Everything is gone. Everything is lost. But you got to try, and you won't know it because, again, it's like, can you go out in the woods and stay for 60 days? Like, well, yeah, I've got the skill. Well, you don't know if you mentally have it.
Right.
So again, that's where that comes in. But you have to do what you can to mentally stay together.
So what are you doing? Like, so what are you doing to hold it, like, mentally? Like what you're talking about, like, what are you doing to, like, mentally, like, just
I would make sure
together?
First I would make sure that me myself, I'm okay, that like I don't have any injuries on me that I need to address. And if I'm with somebody or if I'm with my dog, that's now my companion, that's now my well-being, is my dog, because like that's my buddy. So see if that dog has any injuries to him. And now that I know that I'm okay, now I have to start telling myself, what I had is no more. I need to immediately accept that the way things used to be are not the way they are now. So I have to cut myself off from that. I can't be attached to it. I can't, like, whatever I need to do,
just accept what's happened.
I have to accept this reality. There's now a new challenge, a new reality, and I have to figure out how to tackle this.
Yeah.
So if I'm looking around and if there's any kind of other building, any other kind of structure that didn't get burnt down, that's now my new reality. How am I going to pimp this out, and how am I going to make this better to make it through this night? I'm only worried about this night, because when the day comes, it's a big boost to your feelings, to your, like, if it happens during the night, like,
so don't think long term, just think, I got to get through this night.
Yeah.
Like,
you're like, you've got your priorities now have gone from living high on the mountain to, like, we got to get through this night, or we got to get through this day, whatever it may be, because it's going to get cold as shit tonight. So we've got to figure this out. So whatever kind of structures that I might have around me, I'm going to utilize them. But if they're not there, then I need to start looking at what can I salvage from this that's going to make my night better. Are there any tools, metal? It's got to be a super hot fire for it to burn up a knife.
Yeah.
There may not be any handles on it, or my handle on my axe might be burnt, but the head's still there. So I'm looking for tools that are going to help me recreate what I need to do to get through this night. And so when I assess and figure out what I still have, now I've got some comfort. Well, at least this didn't happen. At least I didn't lose that. At least I still have my dog.
So trying to go over some kind of inventory.
It's reassuring you. Positive mental, reassurance there. So now I have my tools in front of me and what I did salvage. Oh man, there's a big beam of the cabin that didn't get burnt down. So that's something I don't have to recreate. I don't have to go and waste energy cutting a tree. Right. I can reuse that. What can I reuse from this disaster? And now I assess that and see what I have. Okay, if it is in the dark, I'm worried about keeping that fire going. It's already started for me. I don't have to waste my time and energy. So if the whole damn cabin's burnt, then let's just go ahead and keep the bonfire going, dude.
Yeah.
And so if it's at night and I don't have any way to see, like I didn't go to sleep with a headlamp on, like I just need to stay next to that fire. And if there's anything around me, if there's any kind of, like, if it happened to burn down any of the branches of a tree or whatever around, if there's anything that I can build around this fire that can help insulate me and protect me from the wind or whatever, I'm going to do that. But
so his first priority, just get the fire going,
keep it going.
Right.
If it's burnt down. And that's if I'm not able to, like, visually see what's happened. If it was during the day, I'm not necessarily worried about keeping a big fire going. Like, as long as I can see it smoking and I've got embers, I need to assess what I have to recreate, a shelter and recreate some kind of life.
Yeah.
Because those are your priorities. Like, food, water, shelter are the big three things that you've got to think about. Food goes on the back burner. We can go 28 days without eating something. It's going to suck. But most of us have enough fat stored on us walking around that we can burn it for at least 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Water is a big one. Like, dehydration kills a lot of people.
What is the dehydration period? Like, when is it, like, when you're getting, like...
They say it's in threes. 3 weeks. 3 weeks without food. 3 days without water.
And 3 days is like, we're not going beyond 3 days.
Yeah, 3 hours without. I think it's 3 hours without warmth, or hypothermia, because you can die from either one.
Yeah.
Like you want to stay at 98.6 degrees. That's your temp.
Interesting.
If you get too high, you're in hyperthermia.
God, 3 hours is not a big window, dude.
Not at all.
Especially if like you're in this situation. Like,
I think that's the average. I mean, like that's what they say. A lot of that stuff's just like give and take. Like I know I could probably, I've got like if I'm dressed, if my clothes didn't get burnt up on me, like somehow, like I should be dressed somewhat or have some kind of clothing or something to insulate me longer than 3 hours. And then I think it's like 3 minutes without air.
Yeah.
So, but, so if it's cold, snowing, whatever at night, that's going to be the worst scenario that we could think of. So we can run with that. Like during the day would be a better situation. Cause again, I can see things and prioritize what I need to do.
Yeah.
But if it's at night, I'm going to do whatever I can to keep that fire going. And you're falling asleep for 45 minutes and then waking up, and then you might doze off for 2 hours, but you've got to wake up and try to put more, of your house or cabin on the fire.
And you're just falling asleep next to the fire.
You have to. Yeah. If depending on where it is or whatever, if you're able to utilize some of the radiation heat from it, you can. Like maybe if you had any kind of rock or any kind of stone that your cabin was made out of, you can move that around and try to trap some of that heat to radiate back to you. But for the most part, you're going to try to keep it going as much as you can. And then as soon as daylight hits, then you start thinking about hydrating, which melting snow. Again, there's, I say melting snow. That's a whole other thing.
I was going to say, can you just melt snow? It didn't seem like.
Yeah, snow's anywhere between like 70 to 80% air and only like, 10 to 20%
Interesting.
moisture. So that's why you can fill this whole thing up with snow and you only have like this much water.
But what about purity of it? I guess that was my first thought was.
As long as it boils, any water. As long as it's not radioactive or chemically. Boiling water doesn't do anything for chemicals, like pesticides in the water or something. But no matter what it is, cryptosporidium, giardia, any of the bad stuff that's going to make you. And even then, drink the nasty water if you have to.
Because hydration is so critical.
Yeah. Drink the dirty water because, and this, what we teach is it's always a 72-hour window. So as soon as an incident happens, as soon as your cabin burns down, the first 72 hours of that is the most critical because that's your best chance of being found by somebody. If you have to stay put. If you can hike out and if you can get out, you get out. If you know any kind of navigational skills, any direction,
or
sense of direction,
the closest thing is,
you go to the road. Like you get out of there. There's no need to just sit and come save me.
Yeah.
But if it's something like that in the middle of nowhere, that 72-hour window. And again, you keeping that fire going is a signal for people to see where you are. But with that guy's story, he was out there for a reason. So even then, that's why I'm saying this stuff because I wouldn't have the mindset that someone's going to come find me. Why would they come for me if I'm out here and don't want to be found?
Because you intentionally put yourself. Yeah.
So that's why I'm focused on resources. I'm not focused on trying to be found. But if the scenario's flipped around and you're lost, drink the dirty water, don't die from dehydration. You're going to have stomach stuff. You may go to the hospital. You may have long-term gastrointestinal issues, but you didn't die.
Yeah.
But the real thing for any of the scenarios.
Sorry, can I ask you one quick question? So something I've seen, I don't know how common it is, and maybe you've used it before, is this syringe type thing that you can put into whatever water and it purifies it.
Yeah.
Is that legit?
You're talking about the straw that you can.
Yeah, something like that.
It's called a life straw. That they were kind of the first ones that I saw. I don't know that background and history on all the companies, so I don't want to upset somebody if they hear it. No, we patented this first.
Yeah.
But life straws were one of the. So traditionally, filters worked on a layering system of after you put water through so many layers of compounds. They're going to remove impurities. And charcoal filters are a big one. They help affect the taste, but don't get rid of it. So Life Straws use like, they go down to the micron, like 0.999%, like, and they use what's it called? They're basically like a system of like really small micro tubes that the water gets pulled through. So you're putting one end into dirty water, and you're drawing it up through the straw end, and it's, damn, I wish someone's going to listen to this and school me and be like, JB, you're such an idiot. Remember, it's called this. And one of my friends is going to message me. I know it. But basically, it's putting it through this micron filter that is able to pull the water through something that's smaller than the size of the bacteria. So the bacteria is getting caught on.
And if you would have boiled it, it just would have boiled.
It kills them. So it's the parasites or bacteria could still, I guess technically still in there if you put it under a microscope, but they're not alive anymore. They're not like attaching to your, gut microbes and bacteria and screwing you up.
So, I mean, is this like an essential thing you would say for anybody that's going out just to have
now
one of these?
The technology? Yeah, especially here in Texas.
Because it seems like a game changer. Because like you're talking about like boiling water, like I'm thinking, okay, so if you're in this scenario where everything's burned down, just to boil water is probably going to be problematic. Because, I mean, if you had a pot, it's probably metal, so it's probably going to survive a fire. But then it's like still like getting it, putting it over a fire, boiling it.
And we're seeing up there, like, you want the hot liquids because that's going to help keep your core temp up.
Oh, that's true.
You also, like, that's why eating something before you go to bed when it's cold and you're camping is going to be better than going to bed on an empty stomach because you're igniting the furnace in your body. Like, so it's used like a BTU is considered like what it equates to 1 calorie burn. So 1 calorie is 1 BTU of heat. And a BTU is the measurement for like how many BTUs does one log of oak put out? And they'll say like 3,000 BTUs or whatever it might be. I don't know. So eating something is igniting the furnace in your body. It's warming you up internally. Drinking something hot is warming you up internally, and it takes a little while for your body to cool that down, to process it, urine, like whatever. So like in the cold areas, drinking something hot is just as important as sitting by the fire.
Interesting.
But here in Texas, and people that get lost at Big Bend, and it's summertime,
opposite.
You want shade, so you want shelter for shade to keep your core temp low, and then boiling water, if that's all you can do,
you gotta wait for that to cool down.
It sucks, dude. Like people that say, well, I'm just going to bring a metal pot and boil water, like that works for sure
eventually,
but it's not fun. And like, the video that you were talking about earlier in the beginning was just one example, but I've done like multiple survival challenges like that. And I've done one in the summer where you had to sit there and like put the lid on, like we boiled in a metal bottle, and now I screw the lid on loosely. There's pressure because it's hot liquid, and I go and like bury it in the sand next to the edge of the creek to try to let that cold water cool. And it still takes 45 minutes, and you're dying of thirst.
That's all it takes? I thought it would have taken longer than that.
I mean, it depends. Like if you put a closed container in cold running water, it doesn't. I mean, maybe like an hour. But it's still warm. It's not cold and refreshing. Yeah. So, yeah, like the filters now, the technology that we have, I absolutely tell people, like, spend the money on them. Like, there's a company that I've done stuff with, and it's not a paid promotion by any means because I bought all of it in the beginning and then just fell in love with it. But it's a press filter system called Grail.
Like a French press kind of thing?
Pretty much, yeah. So, like, it's 2 containers in one. And the outer container is your contaminated container that you fill up with water. And then you take this filtered container, and it's fitted with O-rings, and it doesn't let any contaminated water get past it. And the filter's in the bottom of the inner chamber. and you press that down, and the water that gets pushed into the inner chamber is now completely pure. And
exactly like a French press works, like.
Dude, and this, I mean, and they've made this to where all over the world, anywhere in the world, and it even takes out chemicals, pesticides, the filter.
That's a game changer, dude.
It's mass, and people complain, I'm not going to spend $80 on it. I'm like, dude, buy once, cry once. Like, you get that crap and enjoy. I'm going down by the creek, and in less than 3 minutes, I'm drinking cold water and refilling, and you're boiling your shit. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, so now I absolutely am like, bring it. But in that scenario, the filters wouldn't do any good, because guess what? Freezing temps, water freezes into the filter, it cracks the micro tubes in there, and now it filters useless.
Wow, yeah.
So, but yeah, that's what I would survive the night, dude. I would get through the night, and then the next morning, I would start trying to rebuild what I could.
I was gonna ask you, so like you get through the night, and obviously, I think in this guy's situation, he didn't know how long he's gonna be out there. But I think it seems like you'd have to kind of prepare for like, okay, since I'm so far ISO out here, I've got to hunker down.
Well, and hopefully he didn't put all of his eggs in one basket too. Like, you would assume that if you're out there, like even at our cabins, like we wouldn't just like, we had multiple cabins and stuff, but we wouldn't just, everybody just put all their stuff in one. Like, you've got like a storage area that maybe he had tools there, maybe he had rations. Like, you know, you're not putting everything in one area to get burnt down, hopefully. But sorry.
No. So can I ask you, like, in that particular setting, what kind of shelter you're looking to build? Like, let's just assume that your cabin, you can't stay in it. Like, I don't know. You probably could. You could probably, like, forge it or structure it in a certain way. You could, like, let's just say you could use those materials. What kind of shelter are you trying to make in that particular environment? Like a cold, snowy environment.
Yeah, so cold and snowy means, like, if it is any precipitation, like, more than likely it's going to snow more. So I'm not worried about necessarily it being wet. Like, again, I'm trying to, like, everything that my mind goes through in any scenarios like this or any situation that I've been in, and even especially when I'm teaching a class, the main goal is to control your core body temp, because that's what's going to kill you before anything else. There's literally documented cases of people in like the swamps of Louisiana, 70-degree weather, they run out of gas in this bayou and it starts raining and they die from hypothermia.
Really?
It's 70 degrees, but because they're wet and it's cloud covered and in the shade, they can't get warm. Their body can't stay at 98.6. And it took longer, like horrible compared to just being in the freezing cold. Yeah. But that's a real thing. So hypo or hyperthermia, controlling your core temp, is like the thing that, for me, that everything revolves around. So I'm building a shelter because I want to control core temp. I'm eating food because I want to control core temp. I'm drinking liquids. I want to control core temp. So if it's a snowy area, I'm assuming that it's just going to snow more if any storms or something does come through. So I don't necessarily need something watertight to keep me from getting wet. I just need something now to help trap whatever heat that I have. So if, let's say I went to bed with enough layers and stuff on, like this is your first form of defense. Like what you're wearing is your shelter.
Right.
So now I need to figure out, how do I either trap more body heat, like I can stuff dead branches in between my clothes to add insulation, like a puffy jacket now.
Oh, shoot. Yeah.
Or I have that fire. And so now, like, that fire, that's a monster that's never satisfied. There's not enough wood that you can put on it it'll burn longer than what you're prepared for.
Yeah.
And eventually it'll just go out. But you can't feed a fire. It's never ending.
Yeah.
So that's now my priority. And I would build my shelter in a way that takes advantage of that radiated heat that comes from the fire. So, like, if you look at a fire, most of the heat's going up into the air, and there's some residual heat around it.
Right.
That's why people build hearths, or they build like a wall. That's why we put stone around our fireplace, because that fire is heating up those rocks, and those rocks are giving out radiated heat to you. So it's heating the area.
No way.
Long after the fire's out, those rocks still have some thermal energy in them.
Oh, man. I never knew that.
So I would try to capture that resource. That's a valuable resource that in a bad way, it screwed my life up now because it burnt my crap down. But now it's my savior.
Yeah.
So I would build a shelter in a way that captures that. So more than likely, it would be an open shelter, because I'd want as much, dead airspace that could be trapped. And I would ideally try to face it towards the fire. You can get away with like 1.5 to 2 full steps from the fire. So like if this is a fire, you take 1 step, 2 step, and that's where the front of your shelter needs to be.
Because I guess the other problem is, let's just say you're using the cabin as the fire. That's a fairly big fire, so obviously you don't want it to. I would touch your structure.
I would get a controlled fire for me now in my shelter. Like, I mean, why not have 2 fires if you can? So like the big fire that's going on, like let it keep eating, and then if there's smaller embers or coals, like move those off to the side and start feeding that, and get that fire built up, and now build close to that. And now I've got double the odds. If this one goes out or snow dumps from a tree, I still have the big one that burnt my crap down.
Right.
So I would build more than likely like a lean-to style shelter, because it doesn't require a lot of energy. I just need one beam that I can either prop up against, a fork in trees. Like normally trees near the bottom have limbs that are kind of broken off and hanging out. So I can run a beam across those 2, and now it's holding that beam up, and I can start putting rib work in there.
What's rib work?
So it's going to be really hard for people to understand this. So a lean-to is basically you have a beam that comes here, and let's say your fire is here in front of you, and you need to be able to prop this beam up because you want to get underneath this, because when this fire is putting out radiant heat, it's getting trapped underneath this leaned object. So like if you hold a cigarette lighter against this, you're going to feel heat against this because that fire is hitting this and bouncing out.
You're essentially describing like the corner of a triangle. Like you're trying to force heat into
you want to make a triangle. Basically a triangle like this. So my rib work would be, instead of just having a beam going across here and I'm underneath this with nothing behind it, I need something that's absorbing this heat. So I go and get dead branches and lay them across this beam and make ribs.
To try and create some kind of like back wall.
And then now I fill in that rib work with like leaves or like pine branches, like that, all the needles and stuff that are on a pine branch. Now I can lay that across it, and I built like a debris shelter. Like it's this. Is that making any sense or no?
I have a picture in my head.
So like imagine if like looking out here at these trees, you have limbs that don't have a lot of leaves on them, and then you have like bushes that have a whole bunch of leaves on them. So the limbs that are longer, that don't have leaves until like the very end because they're reaching out for the sun, those limbs are what you lay across as your rib work, because you need something for these shorter bushy branches that have a lot of dead airspace. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create dead airspace, because dead airspace is insulation. So to break it down, like your jackets only work because it's trapping the body heat that you're producing. Right. So like you have a puffy jacket, and that the insulation or goose down feathers that are in that jacket aren't warm themselves. Right. But they don't allow that heat that you're creating here to just immediately evaporate out of you or just leave. So you're trapping it. Right. So those leaves are creating dead airspace. Like they're becoming like insulation in a puffy jacket. And you have those at the back of your shelter to trap heat. So when you're underneath that shelter, the heat that's just going up into the air and being wasted, the little bit that's coming out of the sides is being rolled in there and bounced out of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What about the sides though?
I mean, at this point, that would be something I'd probably start working on like in the day or whatever. But for now, I just want something to try to get underneath. And again, like to just get through the night, like I'm just gonna sleep next to the fire, like whatever I can, just stay next to that warmth that's there and feed it. But if we're like the next day is when I'd probably start working on building a shelter and recreating some kind of permanent residence to be in.
So what you just described, how long would that normally take
for somebody like, so
for you? Let's just say for
a few hours.
That's it. Man, that sounds like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but I mean, I'm assuming I have tools. Like I've done it primitively with nothing and just a stone axe or like a stone hand axe. Yeah. And that takes a lot longer. And that's also like, you can build the same kind of shelters. You can build debris shelters like that without needing a fire. And you're just going to use your body heat to stay alive through the night. And with those, they take a lot longer because you don't have the energy that's being created from the fire to give you heat. And so you need way more insulation because you're only worrying about your body heat. So with those, you're literally crawling into like a casket, like a tomb almost. Yeah. And you're sleeping in leaves.
So I know you said food wasn't the biggest priority.
No.
Because you can go so long.
Not that first week of this scenario, that first week would be like making my life easier. Like with my shelter, like getting some kind of permanent structure up that I can now call home, and now I can accept my old way of life is no more. This is my new life. This is a new baby I need to invest in and take care of and pimp it out and be as comfortable as I can. Because if you can't get sleep in the woods, like it's the worst thing ever. I mean, it's not as bad as dying or dehydration, but like not being able to sleep is...
Because then your mental just starts...
Yeah, you can't function the next day. Like you're so foggy, or like you can't process simple tasks. And now you're in this mindset that isn't healthy to be out there, and you're going to risk mechanical injury or cutting your finger on accident, or like not paying attention to where you're walking and trip and sprain your ankle. And like that's what I tell people and teach is that scenarios like this are like rarely happen with just one big thing. Lightning strikes, blows your crap up, and now you're screwed.
Right.
These things happen when people make clusters of little mistakes that become one big mistake. So like the lost hiker scenario is like the one that most people can imagine actually happening. That happens because of a lot of little things that the person did wrong before they even got, like, before you left your house, you didn't tell somebody your timeline of when you're leaving, when you expect to be back, and like a halfway point out on the trail of where you should be.
Right.
You're leaving without the proper gear. Like you didn't think it's not supposed to rain this weekend, or I've got enough fuel in my canister stove, and I'm not going to run out, and I don't need to worry about cooking.
Right.
And then you get going on the trail and you see something you've never seen before, and you leave the trail to go explore it. Now you're lost. Okay, well, that doesn't mean you're going to die. That doesn't mean that you're screwed, that you're now in a survival situation. But it does cause concern that, crap, I didn't think to bring a compass because I didn't need it. So now I don't know how to get back. Okay, now I need to either stay calm and realize my situation, or I'm going to freak out. And when I freak out, I'm moving quick and I sprain my ankle. Now things get bad because mechanical injury. What if it's bad enough you can't walk out?
Yeah.
Now you have to stay put. Now do you have the stuff to stay put? So see, all these little things happen before.
Yeah.
If I did sprain my ankle, but I left a plan, it might be one inconvenient night of camping. I've got stuff in my backpack to stay the night because I'm hiking. So I'll just set up camp here. And my wife knows by tomorrow I'm supposed to be at this check-in, and okay, they're not going to know where I am because I'm not done yet. But if I can stay out here 2 days, I'm supposed to be home on Sunday at noon. If I'm not home on Sunday at noon, that's a red flag for her. Now she's going to call people. When's the last time you heard of him? Well, he left at this time. Okay, do you know where he was? Well, he was supposed to be at this place on yesterday afternoon. all right, they immediately go and look there first because they know for sure that's a point of reference you're supposed to be at.
Yeah.
Well, he's not here. Where did he start? He started up here. Now we're going to break that in half and look for him in between these 2 points that he started and was supposed to be at. But if you don't ever do that, you're asking for it. And that's the things that screw people. Like, it wasn't a few years back that someone in Arkansas in the Ozarks, a guy out trail running, and they just wear those little vests with the water bottle and their radio, or their phone, and they're just going to go out running. Well, he wasn't paying attention to the weather, and it flash floods there all the time. What happens? He gets caught in the flash flood. He's got Umbro shorts on and whatever, and he gets caught in the woods, dies of hypothermia because he didn't have he didn't tell anybody. I'm just going out for a run, dude. No big deal. Yeah. Like, that's the whole thing. Like, where we say, like, in the beginning, like, Mother Nature is neither for you or against you. She just is. Or Mother Nature is always against you. Prepare for the worst. Like, either one of those you can do, but just understanding, period, that all that out there operates on its own time. Like, you're just there to enjoy it. Like, you don't control it,
Yeah. So there was we're probably we're about 2:30 now, 2 hours and 30 minutes. So we'll probably wrap this up. But there was one thing I wanted to ask you about. So, I guess kind of in line with, like, Mother Nature is a force to be recognized with. That also includes wildlife, which you said most people are afraid of. I saw back in, I think it was back in 2017, the bottom of your pants had these, like, two...
Oh, yeah.
What was that?
I got dry struck by a water moccasin.
Drag struck? What does that mean?
It's like, I was out fishing this pond and having a good time, and like, where with us being in this area, this is a whole foreign thing to people up north that don't have poisonous snakes.
Yeah.
So think about that. It's kind of funny. We know, like, snaky areas. So let's say me and you are out here working on your landscape.
Yeah.
Like, underneath the bushes and in the piles of leaves, it's snaky.
Or tall grass.
Out there in the middle of the lawn with green grass, it's not snaky.
Right.
So I'm fishing and I'm always looking at snaky areas and whatever. And I walked around this area that was snaky, and then I'm in grass that is a little bit taller than lawn grass, but it's a pond that's, like, behind this hotel area. So like, it's not completely crazy. And I was walking and, like, was just, like, casting and walking, and then I stopped and stayed there for a little bit. And when I picked up my backpack, I went to go pick up my backpack and was like, well, I'm going to walk a little bit further and cast one more time. Left my backpack there with all my stuff. And then as I was walking, I went and stepped, and I felt something underneath my foot, like a frog. It felt like a frog or something. It was definitely something alive and squishy. And then I felt like, it wasn't that hard, but I felt something hit the side. And so immediately I was like, oh crap. And I looked and I saw a tail, like, from the grass going into the water.
Yeah.
And so I stopped and waited, and then it came and, like, got, like, onto this rock area, because I wanted to see what kind of snake it was.
Right.
Because then I know, if it's just whatever, screw it. It's kind of cool. I got hit by a snake. I saw it was a water moccasin, so I'm like, it's poisonous. So then I'm like, I need to get back to my bag, but I don't need to get crazy. I don't need to elevate my heart rate.
So you're like, just keep it locked in. Like,
yeah. So then I'm like, I get back, and there's a rock there that I sit on, and I put my bag underneath my boot to keep my leg elevated so that all my blood's not just rushing.
This is so crazy, bro.
Because it's like, because you want to minimize the poison coursing through your veins. Like, so if you can restrict blood flow to it.
Sorry, I'm just taking some real quick.
Oh, you're good. So if you restrict your blood flow or whatever, it can help slow it. So then I'm like, I need to assess and see, like, obviously it wasn't my ankle. I felt where it was. So I saw the 2 marks from his fangs on, like, the cuff of my pants leg. And so I pulled up my pants leg and saw just the 2 little smallest basically like just kind of little scrapes almost on the side of my boot, and I knew, okay, he didn't.
So he didn't get through.
He didn't get through the boot, the side of my boot, and then I called it a dry strike because like he didn't even put any venom. Like there's no moisture or anything. You know, it's just a dry.
Just because you stepped on him.
Yeah,
a lot of this thing the F off me.
A lot of them will do that. Like a lot of them, unless they've been provoked. A lot of them out of like they say like in areas where there's a lot of snakes. If you're walking through the woods, like the thing that like right now from here on out, just ingrain it into your head. Don't ever just step over logs, because a lot of times snakes, like that mindset of it's a shelter, it's radiated heat, that log is trapping their body heat they're creating. They'll be on the backside of logs or underneath the log. So when you step over, boom, you step, pow, they're, you know, or it's an ambush. If prey runs along the log, they're right there and they can hit it.
Right.
So you always step on top of a log first.
Got it.
So step on top of the log, wait a little bit, then step over it. And they'll dry strike a lot of times. If you scare them like that, you step on them, they'll just let you know I'm here, and then they'll get away a lot of times. But if you're messing with them, you know, that's when they're like, you're gonna get the goods. Right? You deserve it.
You know what place seems like they could really use you? It's Australia, dude.
Heck no. Dude,
that place is out of control.
Everything there can kill you.
Oh my!
But then God. I saw a video of a guy from Australia that's like, you know, I don't get why all you Americans are saying that it's so dangerous and deadly here. Like, yeah, we've got a lot of poisonous stuff here. It's a way bigger continent than what a lot of people imagine too.
Huge.
And a lot of it is just like desert with nothing. But he's like, we don't have bears. Y'all have 3 types of bears. We don't have angry moose,
dude.
You know, we don't have like huge wild felines and like.
Can I tell you? Sorry, not to interrupt you.
No,
I did not realize how big a moose was, dude. Those things are humongous.
Yeah, dude,
bigger than SUVs.
That was something I was kind of sad about that I didn't get to see more of in Alaska, but I did see one.
Man. Really?
Yeah, and so I had this list of animals that I had to see. Like it's a bucket list. Like when you go up there. And that was one of the first things I saw in like early on. And so where Skagway is, and how I was saying it's an hour and 15-minute boat ride to get to my cabin. We go down, it's the largest, widest, deepest canal.
Yeah.
In I know North America, but if not the world, I can't remember. But it's big enough that 2 cruise ships can pass each other.
No way.
Okay, so they go all the way up into this little corner in Alaska, and they pass each other in this canal. And then we're these little boats, you know, and it's just like airplanes. If there's communication, you're not running into each other.
Right.
We're on our boat, a little 20, 30 passenger boat, and we hear a call on the radio that from one of the cruise ship captains that they've stopped in the canal because there's a moose swimming from one side to the other. I mean, this is huge, dude. This is like bigger than any lake around here, wide. And it's swimming, dude. And so we go up and we watched it, the whole thing, dude. It took it like 2 hours.
Google how fast a moose is.
Crazy fast. Have you ever seen a bull moose run through snow?
No.
Dude, there's videos of like guys like cross country skiing on like beaten down snow pass, and a bull moose comes running out of the woods to the side, and there's plows that are like, the snow's plowed up like 4 feet high, and it's like up to its chest in snow, and it's hauling like 30 miles an hour through snow, and it's
35 miles per hour is how fast they go.
Is that?
Yeah, that's what it says.
They're a unit, dude. Like they're an absolute unit, and the females are super scary. When they've got their little calves with them, they'll do anything to protect them.
If anybody hasn't looked up recently, there's a video of a moose walking down. It's
dude
unbelievable.
Its stomach is touching your Kia, dude. The top of your Kia.
Like, it's the most crazy, dude.
Complete.
I just had no clue.
Complete unit. Just.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's so wild.
Yeah.
Dude, I think we'll probably wrap it up there. If that's all right with you.
Yeah, no worries.
Hey, thank you so much, dude.
Yeah.
You are fantastic, crazy, wild. Like, your freaking journey is unreal, dude. So I'm gonna love kind of keeping up with it. Maybe we can come back on again another time.
Absolutely,
talk about something more specific. But you're a G, dude. Appreciate it, and we'll close it up there. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.